Good evening, how are you?
The time, date, and location of this meeting was published in the Asbury Park Press and posted on the bulletin board in the office of the Township of Lakewood at least 48 hours in advance. The public has the right to attend this meeting, and reasonable comprehensive minutes of this meeting will be available for public inspection. This meeting meets the criteria of the Open Public Meetings Act.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Grunberger. Mr. Franklin.
Here.
Mr. Hipperson. Mr. Flansbaum. Mr. Herzl.
Here.
Mr. Renner. Mr. Coleman. Mrs. Zagrakos. Mr. Garfield. And Mr. Flansbaum has arrived. Thank you.
Here. Confirmation recording status?
Yes, recording is on. Thank you.
Okay, swearing of professionals.
Shall we state your name for reference?
Stan Slavin.
Martin Truscott.
Do you swear from the testimony you give seeking will be truthful and accurate?
Yes.
Thank you. Alice, I want to start with wishing well to Mr. Hibberson. I heard he's in the hospital.
Just recently released. He said nothing major. He's doing fine and will be back in a few days.
Okay, so I wish him well. Okay. Today's continuation of yesterday, we're going to have the professionals just go over.
Yes, Mr. Herzl would always recommend that Mr. Truscott, heard where we left off yesterday, that Mr. Truscott just go through the various zones, his reasons for addressing it in the master plan the way he did, so the board just can go through everything in a brief manner. Just based on the this is a continuation of the deliberations from yesterday.
There's no new testimony.
Yes, it's not.
It's not. Okay.
It's just clarification based on the question. Don't forget to use the microphone.
So Mr. Trust,
Chairman, just so you know, there are 3 new maps in front of you that T&M brought with you tonight. I gave each of the board members a copy, and there is a copy of each on the podium for interested members of the public. I did have 2 extra copies that I gave out to Mr. Klein and Mr. Robinson, who I'm sure can share.
And they will be part of the board's record?
Yes.
So noted.
okay, Marty, you can explain the 3 maps that we have. So we have the current zoning, and we have 2 proposed zonings.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
They have to do. Have something more presented?
No, good question. This is, during the board file. Identify what they are.
Did you want one of these?
Unlike most board hearings,
Oh, they're different.
this is not a, what's called quasi-judicial. This is really more of a legislative function. You don't make findings of law, in fact, you're acting, and I would say it's more of legislative.
Oh, it has to stay there.
So we don't have cross-examination, we have public comment, so no, we're not going to actually mark them, but they are all part of the board's record, and we should identify them as such. And so just identify what the map is, and that will be part of the board's file.
Okay, the title of this map is called Proposed Land Use, and this was revised today, 9/6/2017, prepared by T&M Associates.
Marty, for clarification purposes.
Mike.
Thank you. For clarification purposes, Marty, this is this proposed land use map is the map in the master plan document that's on file, but with the corrections based upon the discussion yesterday. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. LU4 is the number.
The original version is LU4, and then this would assume that the board accepts this map, that this would replace the existing LU4 map, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Lower days.
Which one do you want next?
So those,
Which one is the new one which you're talking about?
Yeah, one says current, you have three handouts. One says current zoning.
Right.
That's also a document that's in the master plan. That's your current zoning. There's no changes, no proposals. That's in there as a reference, and so I wanted to give you that, so in terms of comparison to the proposed land use.
And Marty, that's identified, the existing zoning map is identified in the master plan that's on file as LU2, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, titled current zoning. Okay, and then the second one, the one we just talked about, proposed land use, is the second handout. And they look very similar, so you just have to look at the title. And then the third handout, and the one I'm going to go over, is called proposed land use changes. So let me just before I go into that, the proposed land use contains revisions based on the meeting last night, and so those are changes were made in accordance with the board's comments.
And Marty, the proposed land use changes map, that map identifies the specific revisions in the existing zoning that would take place, assuming that the land use plan was adopted, correct?
That's correct. Now this map was prepared in response to the board's questions last night as to, they wanted to see how the land use of the zoning map would eventually be changed. This is not a document that is in the master plan. This is for illumination and presentation purposes, so the board can get a better idea, better informed as to what the proposed changes are. So I'm going to walk you through, there's a number of changes. I'm going to be very quick in terms of just listing changes and why. And so that you'll see what changes. It also eliminates the source of the the source of the recommendations in terms of the land use plan changes. The board was especially interested in what changes came from the 2007 master plan reexamination report. So there's a number of land use plan changes that are based on that. So that you'll see that, and I'll explain as we go along.
So Marty, just again to clarify, you're going to be presenting the changes and inventorying all the changes, including the corrections from yesterday, and then as per the board's request, you're going to provide a clarification as to the source of that change, whether it's from the 2007 master plan, the recommendations of the land use committee, or a change that recognizes existing land uses.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Jackson, because this map is not in the master plan document, does this need to be marked separately, or is this, you have to do anything to this?
As I indicated, it's just part of the board's file. We can identify it. If you want to, if you think it's easier to put a sticker on it, call it an exhibit number.
Maybe you should take one of the hard copy versions, just so that.
Yeah, if you want to put an exhibit, we can do that. That's easy enough. Do you have
I have an extra one here. If you need it.
Yeah, put it on the board secretary. What are we going to?
John,
B1?
I have an extra one here.
We'll put it on the board secretary. So yeah, so it's in the board file. I don't think this is really, it's just a matter of, so if someone needed to figure out what we're looking at, they could. And you have the date, what it's prepared by, and what it is. So it's in the board file. The board.
Yeah, this map was prepared on September 6th.
So we'll call it Board 1. B1. All right? B1.
And Marty, you can direct me to where you want to start highlighting.
Yeah, the board's information. The changes are numbered from 1 to 39. So I'm going to be very 38. Excuse me. I'm going to be very quick as to each one. So I want to go briskly through those. So number 1, and that's basically Carsaljo. That's right now zoned A1. we're designating that as OSP preservation, open space preservation. So that's, I think, that's a 2017 recommendation. Number 2,
Was that 2017 or 2007?
2017, from this year. That's part of the open space consolidation of those lots, of the zone districts. We'll see later with the Crystal Lake Preserve and also the open space zone that's in the town. The logic for the board's information, the logic of the numbers, you'll see we're going to jump around the township in terms of geographically, but the reason it's doing that is because we're going through the zones from existing zoning to proposed alphabetically, starting with A1, so you see that we go around the town, so rather than working our way geographically, so you see that. So number 2 is, west of Route 9, it's currently zoned A1, it's a very small parcel, a water, New Jersey American Water Plant, 2007 master plan reexamination recommended that this be changed to office transitional, and so that's the parcel there.
And that's
Number
that's to recognize the existing land use.
Correct, yeah. Number 3, again, A1, that's down in the Cross Street Prospect core area, pointing to right now. That's part of the smart growth core. So it's currently zoned A1. Existing land uses it joins multifamily, so the recommendation is for a multifamily there. So it's a 2017 recommendation. Number 4 is the southern part of the township along Route 70. Go to that. And this was discussed last night. That's again a 2007 master plan re-examination report recommendation from B5 to B5A.
And Marty, that also is, as you mentioned, in a highway node under the smart growth plan, and that zoning provides for mixed-use development consistent with the node designation in the smart growth plan, correct?
That's correct. Number 5 is the Crystal Lake Reserve, and that's just a change in labeling, and nothing really changes in terms of the uses or what's allowed. It's still, it'll be, the designation will be open space preservation, and we'll come to that. Crystal Lake Reserve.
Staying open space.
Yeah, stay in open space, yeah.
Same as that.
Yeah, and that's a recommendation of the, in 2017, of this master plan. It's just a classification. We're consolidating basically, there's several open space types of zone districts. We're consolidating into one. Open space preservation. No other difference, right. 6 and 7 have to do with the commercial zones around the airport. Going in 2 different cases. In one case from a limited professional, and then the other one, M1, both going to the airport business and commercial zone on the eastern part of town, around the airport.
What does that do? What does that allow you to do?
Well, yeah, and then maybe I'm going to explain where the source of that. That was, I think we talked about it a little bit last night. That is where the Township Committee actually adopted an ordinance to update and modernize the boundaries of the commercial area around the zone, around the airport, to make it more supportive of the airport use. And so that ordinance was adopted by the Township Committee and put into effect, but then it was nullified because of notice requirements. So this would bring that back. So it's already a governing body action, and so we thought it appropriate to be within the master plan. And then it updates and modernizes the commercial areas and the airport area. Number 8, the see, that's M1 to, yeah, okay, that's again in the Cross Street core area, one of the smart growth core areas. What is that now? That's currently zone M1, and recommendations to RM multifamily, and that's to recognize that a use variance was granted in its existing land use, to recognize. It's already built on, yes, it's already, yes. So I recognize existing land use. Number 9,
You said it's built on, but what's our lot size?
it's duplex, it's, yeah,
So
Yeah.
this zoning designation just reflects what's there. There's nothing else to build, right? It's all built that.
that's right.
Correct the map, make sure the map is full.
Yeah, so it recognizes, yeah, your zoning should reflect the existing land uses where appropriate. Number 9 is in the M1 zone to R20.
The M2.
That's correct, yeah, that's correct, yeah, actually, the M2. Yeah, that's the Pine River Village area along Pine Street. That, again, recognizes the existing land use. It's already built upon and totally occupied. It's been there for years, so it recognizes residential zoning to recognize residential land use. Number 10, and that was also a 2007 Master Plan Reexamination Report. Number 10, that's open space, a current open space zone, and so it's a change in label. And that's the Ocean County Parks area, the large area in green. And so that's, yeah, it's just, again, changing label.
What's the difference?
Okay. Pardon me?
What's it from the OS to OS?
It's just a change in label. Everything else stays the same in terms of what was proposed, yeah. It just, that's, again, it's consolidation. And as you can see, as we're going through here, like, for example, going back to number 9, the different color scheme in terms of 9 is a 2007 re-examination report recommendation. Those are, so I distinguish that, so, because the board had asked which recommendations on the land use plan were from the 2007.
The red is 2007.
Yeah, so the orange or pink color. Cover 10, 11, that is also the airport zone from the PS to the ABC zone around the airport. Professional services. Same thing, yes. Again, those different zones were merged into one new zone and with a different set of uses.
Yeah, so to clarify, Marty, even though that we identify them separately, 6, 7, and 11, essentially that's the entirety of the ABC zone that the township committee had previously adopted, and that the planning board, if in fact it adopts this master plan, is affirming the land use concept we have today.
Yes.
You said that this changes the use also. What is the change?
Exclusive.
It doesn't change, it's still commercial, industrial and commercial type of uses, but it mimics what's out there existing. So it really updates and modernizes those uses and merges them into one
Was it I hear before that I can't or couldn't be managed?
Can you talk into the microphone, please? You're being here.
My understanding of the ABCZ zone is that the only thing it does is it excludes schools. That's what it does, in the industrial park, in that section. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. I mean, the uses are taken from the existing zones and merged into one.
Number 12.
12, the R10 to R75.
So that's near the downtown, Marty.
Okay, this is one I think that Ally pointed out. This is a 2007 master plan recommendation. That's a developed area in the downtown, this small area. It's 12. 13,
It's currently developed as a R75.
currently developed in residential. I don't know the exact lot sizes, but that was part of the recommendation.
I believe it is, so that's the reason why it's being
I
recognized.
think so, we gave all the variance.
Exactly.
And number 13.
13, that is the one of the discussion points last night, where from R10 to R75 in Cherry Street area, along Route 88, just west of the county park.
And that was recommended in 2007.
Yes, it was, that entire area, yes. 14,
Just south of the street. Just south of
No.
Yeah, it's to the east of Route 9 and south of Oak Street. It's a rectangular. I think it's next to HD district. The HD,
oh, I'm sorry, it's, kind of hidden here, okay. This is, as Dan mentioned, it's part of the Oak Street core, it's part of the Smart Growth core. This is a business designation from R10A to B3, and it adjoins the existing HD zone. And that's 2017 master plan recommendation to implement the Smart Growth plan.
Take away residential, making business.
And
I believe it is, that's
It's currently residential.
Yeah, and I think the
Let's
municipal
shut the cell phones. Thank you.
If I recollect correctly from the master plan, or from the density committee discussions, I think these are lots that are the rear lots that are adjoined or part of the adjoining business area. So I think this is intended to rationalize the change of the zone district boundary there. It's not necessarily.
It's contiguous to the.
Yeah, I think there's a rationalization based upon the lot configuration
Okay.
here, if I recall correctly.
Okay, thank you.
Number 15 is designation of R10A in current zone to R40, which is a 1 acre. That's to implement the smart growth plan because this is part of the, again, Oak Street core area, but this is the preservation part of that Oak Street or Kettle Creek preservation. So it's zoned to a lower density in that case for preservation purposes or to lower the impact. That was 15. 16 is in the same general area. That's the ball fields, according to that. And that's OS to OSP, from residential to OSP, which is open space preservation.
Close to low density.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. 17. Yes, yeah.
That's what this is.
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah, that's, 2000, that's the 2007 recommendation. Again, that's in the Oak Street core area. The next one, 18, is also 2007 recommendation.
I think it's, it's by the Bristol Lake Reserve.
Okay.
That's already built up.
That's,
That's already built.
I believe so.
Yeah, that's already built.
Yeah. And that was also, that was 2007 and then also 2014 recommendation. So 19, that's the 19, just north of the Hearthstone development. That is again the 2007 recommendation that was not implemented. The front part of that is developed, but the rear part is vacant. 20 is also 2007 recommendation, and that's the apartment complex over. So that's an existing land use. It's recognized as multifamily instead of the single family designation. 21, again, is a 2007 recommendation. That's up by Route 88 in New Hampshire. That came up in last night's conversation. The western corner on the north side of Route 88. That's already built upon and constructed, so that recognizes existing land use.
There's an existing retail use.
Correct. 22 is, should be some sound.
It's,
Okay, yes.
south of
That was a recommendation of the Housing Density Subcommittee to zone 2 from residential to B5, B5A. And that also implements part of the smart growth plan because it's part of the highway corridor.
It's in the designated highway node.
Right. 23 is similar in terms of it was a 2017 Housing Density Subcommittee recommendation, and that's went to Chestnut Street. It adjoins both sides, or apartments on both sides. So the recommendation was to recommend the zoning to R10A, provided the sewer service was provided, and we did find out that there was sewer service to that area. That's number 23. 24 is the yes, that's Lanesville Road. Yeah, so those did 24, 30, and 27 all along. Those were again 2007 master plan recommendations, and those are all existing development. So it's 24, and let me, 25. It's 2014.
Keep on referring to the 2007 recommendation.
Yes. So, okay, in 2007, 10 years ago, the planning board went through a similar process and went through and made some recommendations for rezoning. So,
10 years later, we're going to take that recommendation.
yes.
Can I just, I've counted all but one so far from the 2007 recommendations that are already built on. In other words, right? So in other words, I don't want anybody to think that we're taking 2007 recommendations and now implementing things that were discussed 10 years ago. They've already been built on. So, but the map is not reflected the existing use is not reflected on the map. I just want that to be clear. They're already built on all except for one so far I count. Right?
Yeah, they've got, in terms of the planning recommendations, we're just citing it, but as Mr. Klassenbaum was mentioning, yeah, those are, they've gotten approvals through variances and whatnot, what they needed to get occupied. So now we're just existing, the map should reflect those areas. So what had happened was, there were about 35 recommendations in 2007. The majority of them were not implemented. There were numerous zoning changes over that 10 years, but those are the ones that have not been implemented.
And Marty, if I were to recall, and Justin as well, there were a few that were in the 2007 re-examination report that were not developed, that were not recommended by the master plan committee.
That's right.
26. That's part of the Oak Street core area, part of the preservation of the Kettle Creek area. So it's going from a lower density from R20 to R40, and that's again to implement the smart growth plan.
And Marty, those areas of 15, 30, 35, 26, those are also areas that were placed outside of the sewer service area as part of the discussions with the DEP that went on during the course of the plan endorsement process. And this is also where we have what we call the Schedule A properties in the non-contiguous cluster, and also an area where the municipally owned properties outside of the sewer service area were also put into a conservation easement by the township committee, correct?
With, the only exception is 15 is within the sewer service area.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the 34, 35 are minutes.
Yeah, with the exception of 15.
So why is it?
15 is a park. 15 is currently a park. So instead of keeping it in R10A, it's reflecting the fact that it's a park.
It's lower density.
Yeah, it's lower density. It's being moved into a lower density.
Yeah.
I see going through, there's a lot of changes that will be lower density. We're changing the open space a lot. Yeah. Or the clarification. Classification.
Clean up.
Yeah.
27 is up, I believe it's Lane's Mills Road up to the north.
Where was that, Mark?
27. Yeah,
Right in the 24.
yeah, that's a small area.
I want to stay in that. This goes with it?
With single family homes. So it's, yeah, it's a, from R20 to R75. So that's up, but that's to recognize existing land use there.
And then part of that aspect of it is so that if somebody wants to do an improvement to their property or put on a deck or whatever, that instead of having the R20 bulk standards, that they would have R75 bulk standards, which would be more commensurate with the nature of the development, so that it would eliminate them from having to, come into the zone for just a simple variance for a shed or rear yard variance.
From R20, R75, it's just for a shed.
Well,
Put another house in the bottom.
if you take a look at the size of that area, it's very, very small. And again, it's intended to recognize existing development. So,
It's possible, but it's just some sort of shed.
This was recommended in 2007.
So, yeah.
yes, it
And the
is.
planning board acted upon that and gave them the density of R75.
I don't know if the planning board acted on that. The zoning board had acted.
Well, it was based on the 2007 regulations.
Well, not being involved with the case, I don't know if they cited that, but I would imagine that there would be a reference that would have been made to it. But again, if you look at that area, it's a very, very small area. It's very specific to that.
Right now, it's existing. It's only for clarification purposes.
Yeah, there's no way that it can be developed into R20.
Okay. Number 28. On the bottom of Chestnut.
Yes, yeah, that's one of those existing apartment or townhouse developments that's along Chestnut. That's 28, and then 29. That's the, again, another townhouse development. From R20 to RN. Yeah, and 29 was a 2007 recommendation, but then it got built. So, that's existing, yes. Yes, it's existing. 30 is also developed, it's 2007. Oh, yeah, that's the RN, that's existing.
Mr. Coleman,
No,
the
that's
microphone,
the
please.
Yeah.
Right, it's 230.
I see. Yeah, that's part of the same recommendation in time.
I see two.
Yeah, three of them,
Yeah, I see five.
Lane's Mill and then Rudy.
Those are built okay.
Yes, they're all,
Those are Ocean Place, Ocean Point, and I think Wood Lake Manhattan. That's the
right. That's why it was identified, so we kept it all. These are all changing from that one designation R20 to RN. 31 is in the southern part of the township. That was a modification from R20 to R12 C to B5A. That was partially was a 2007 recommendation, and then there was, based on the existing zoning, we then modified some of those boundaries to make sense with the existing zoning.
12 from 70.
Yes, exactly.
32.
32,
B5A.
right, to B5A. This is highway business. 32 is,
It's on the cross street corridor.
32 cross street 4, the recommendation of the Housing Density Subcommittee from the current R2012 cluster to R75.
And
That's part of the smart growth for Prospect Street, Cross Street.
And Marty, that's consistent with the recommendation made in the 2013 Smart Growth Plan adopted by the planning board, correct?
Yes.
Clustering and setting R75 are density more similar.
It would, R20, it would be basically half acre, R75 would be greater than that. It would be, well, it's 5 units per acre. So it'd be greater than R75. But this is part of the smart growth core, and so that's what it recommended to
Is that
provide.
good already as well?
Pardon me?
Is that good already?
No. No, that's a 2017 recommendation.
What's the reason for this recommendation?
To implement the smart growth plan. And the Housing Density Committee recommended that also. 33. Oh, okay, that's up by the cross street area.
Yeah, you can see it.
Please be quiet, here.
It's right by your,
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. Yeah, that's an area that we discussed last night, so that's the R10, single-family homes, that makes it more consistent with the housing these recommendations. So this is our area, would be R10, we don't, but only allowing single-family,
SFDs,
single-family detached.
detached,
Yes.
no duplexes or...
No duplexes in that area. Yeah, that would be the recommendation.
34 is by the area that we're talking about before. By Oak Street.
Yeah, that's part of that. No.
Lower Oak Street. Right below Oak
Yeah,
Street.
yeah, that's part of the Oak Street core area, pointing to right now. From the R40-20 cluster to R10, and that would recommend, that's a recommendation for the core area to provide for the residential development. 30.
Ready?
No. 35 would be again, also in the smart growth plan. That's part of the Kettle Street preservation in that area. For the lower density, basically R40 density rather than the cluster provision. Then right now it's R40/20 cluster.
So it's a lower density.
No, that would just be a lower density.
Yeah, and again, there's in that area, there's approximately Kettle Creek, there's a mix of publicly owned and privately owned properties. The publicly owned properties in that area have been placed in a conservation easement, and both the publicly owned and privately owned can be used, will be used as Schedule A properties in the non-contiguous cluster. And just to clarify, that's not clustering on that site, but those would be in a non-contiguous cluster, those would be parcels that would be identified for open space purposes in the non-contiguous cluster. So that's the reason why the idea in that area is generally preservation but with a base zoning of R40. But essentially, because it's outside of the sewer service area, the only reasonable and realistic development pattern for that would be used in the non-contiguous cluster as preservation and open space purposes.
36, that's in the Oak Street core area, providing for additional multifamily, implementing a smart growth plan in that area. So it's basically an extension of an existing multifamily area, adjoining multifamily area.
That's Marty, is that where one of the affordable housing sites?
That's correct, yeah. Yeah, it adjoins the affordable housing site. 37 and 38 are basically overlaying. They're not, it just sets some standards for, in 37 for public purpose, within,
There's a CP.
Where it is in Cross Street core. Well, no, that's right, yes.
I just asked, what's CPSC?
That's the Cross Street core overlay area.
Okay, is there any change from what's existing?
It would, that would allow set up certain design standards in terms of the planning board had talked about in terms of types of development with the perimeter buffer in that area to set up some of the standards that the smart growth planning will call for.
And Marty, in 38, that's municipally owned property for the, essentially, and that was identified in the smart growth plan for park area, or is it a portion of that?
That's right, yeah, park area, and there's also water storage there too, so it provides for.
So it's more of a public purpose than,
So that a park could be provided as development occurs.
On the map I'm looking at, I noticed the area that's the fairways, the outplay, Blue Plus Stadium, some others have no listing of the number.
Yeah, because there's no change there. We're not proposing any changes. So it would remain the same. So these are, yeah, trying to eliminate how the land use plan map would change based on the recommendations from one to the other. So no change.
Mark, there was a section on James Street that was discussed. There was a section on James Street that was discussed, a transition area between the industrial buildings on James Street and some of the duplexes there.
This,
I just didn't see it detailed that.
you'll see it on the maps that I provided to the board. It's highlighted in yellow, so you can see the area. It's what is it here? There's about 5 or 6 lots here, and they could possibly,
Speaking of like this.
that could possibly provide some kind of transition between the industrial area and the R10 area, the single-family area. That it's, I believe, about 18 acres in size along James Street and West Cross Street. So that it's for something for consideration as we're going through the map. And so it's just only highlighted on your map in yellow. So for discussion purposes.
There was discussion about a transition area, maybe to allow for some sort of multifamily on 12 or 15,000 square foot lots.
Right, and so it wasn't a set decision.
I wanted to make it clear because it wasn't on.
Right, so that would be something that the board might consider as part of that, if they wanted to amend the map to include that area.
I think there'll be a few amendments. There'll be a few, there's also some other things just to fix.
Mike, you have to speak.
Sorry. There's a few, what should we call mistakes also, like I just see a letter sitting here that is, 2 zones running down 1 lot. So there will be some corrections.
But this is highlighted now. I don't know if we're going to get this letter tonight. This is highlighted now. Since it's highlighted, I just wanted to point out why it's highlighted.
There will be a lot of corrections we will be dealing with the next 2-3 meetings. Now we'll talk more about the development list.
So that's all the different changes that were recommended. So that's, I'm completing my testimony.
Okay, thank you. Any board members have any questions? Yes, David.
I have a couple questions, yes.
Mike.
Is it on?
Can't hear you.
Yes.
No.
Real close, Dave, you just
Is it on?
shout.
All these changes, that you say here in the drop-down, was there any assessment as to what infrastructure requirements are needed and the cost of them? Okay.
No, there was no assessment of the exact impact, and it's on the infrastructure or the cost. It's not that to do the impact assessment at a cost. It's not really part of a master plan process. I'm not sure if I'm getting hurt. It's not part of a master plan process. The detailed cost estimates of the impact of the additional changes.
But shouldn't it be something we should look at, cost and expenses?
Can I just,
Knowledgeable what we're voting on.
I just want to speak from the perspective of the advisory board that recommended some of these revisions. On-site infrastructure costs are going to be 100% on the developer. In other words, the developer is going to pay 100% of their on-site infrastructure costs. That goes without saying. The off-site costs are going to be part of the impact fee that the township is going to be collecting. And part of implementing these zoning changes is also implementing the impact fee for each development as it comes before the board for approval. So these zoning changes are only going to, the impact fees are going to be part of these zoning changes. So on-site's 100% on the developer. And off-site there's going to be an impact fee that's going to be collected from the developer for road widening, sewer, water main extensions, stormwater drainage, all that stuff. So, that's part of this whole thing.
And
I
was
just want to
that,
add that the impact fee, as far as what we're requesting for the township, should be all over in every zone that the developers will have to pay an impact fee to develop the roads.
Yeah, that is part of the recommendations that are contained in the circulation plan element, utilities plan element. And Justin is absolutely correct that there is a mechanism to collect appropriate fees both on-site and off-track. And you have the Transportation Improvement District, which again the board is recommending expanding township-wide. I should point out that as part of the plan endorsement process, and also as described in the utility plan element, there's been extensive dialogue and discussion with New Jersey American Water, the MUA, Regional Sewer Authority with regards to the existing and planned capacity for both the water systems and the sewage treatment facilities and systems township-wide. And that was one of the things that was stressed by DEP, Office of Planning Advocacy, as being an important component that they needed assurances. And both the MUA and New Jersey American Water are in the process of updating, doing a 10-year plan for infrastructure that's necessary for water supply within the township. So from the standpoint of evaluating the capacity based upon the projections of growth, and the projections of growth provided to the utilities were based upon the growth projections in the smart growth plan. So from a macro analysis, township-wide analysis, that there's been extensive evaluation of infrastructure capacity. From a micro perspective, as mentioned by Justin, that all the developers are going to have to pay for their fair share of the infrastructure that's going to be necessary to support the growth and development.
how much is that in dollars and cents?
Well, that's where Mr. Truscott was very clear. He said that we don't do, or we did not do a monetary evaluation. We just can't do that at this stage. That's going to have to be assessed, and everybody's going to have to be paying for their fair share. That would be to be able to do such a cost estimate on a site-by-site basis at this point in advance would be exceptionally costly to the township to do that way.
How does the county do it?
Can I just interject for a second also? For the township to do site-by-site cost analyses is not something that the township will spend public money on. As each application comes in from an infrastructure point of view, as each application comes in, escrow accounts are set up, and the developer will actually pay for the independent studies as they come in. So in other words, that's typically how it's done. You can correct me if I'm wrong, But you come in with the development, you set up an escrow account. Once the escrow account's set up, you can do an analysis of what the impact fees are going to be. And then through a developer's agreement, application by application, that developer is going to have to pay the fair share. That's typically how it's done, because you're not going to spend township money analyzing how much each developer is going to pay. The developer is going to pay to see how much they're going to, what their impact fee is going to be.
Yeah,
That's how it goes.
That's exactly how it's done.
So it's
And
on the county level?
excuse me, and that's
It's also
also,
on the county level?
that's also at the county level as
I
well.
know the county is collecting impact fees right now.
Yes, I mean, when the developments come in, they're reviewed and approved by the county, and they have to pay their fair share of their infrastructure improvements to the county as well. And as noted, you know, they're represented and identified as well in the TID, the Transportation Improvement District. So I think that from the standpoint of the master plan, that we've done the appropriate and adequate evaluation of the overall capacity, and then it's a question of doing the cost evaluation on a site-by-site basis as development takes place. I also should point out, too, that as Marty had indicated, many of the zone changes just are there to reflect the existing development, and so it doesn't have, none of those zone changes have any impact on
It's
infrastructure.
only on new construction, so the new development.
That is correct.
Dave has a question.
Yes, I wasn't that concerned who's paying for the infrastructure. We've been told, fairways, we have to cut our water use back 10%. The municipal, it's in the paper, municipal water, they're telling us is in poor condition. This has nothing to do with the building, this is based on use. And so I'm wondering how we service all these areas, and there's nothing to service them.
I don't, again, from a water perspective, we don't, as you know, I'm the director of the Utilities Authority. We don't service the Fairways development, so I'm not sure what 10%, you know, it could be during the summer, maybe there was a drought or something that they had.
I'm under contract with them.
Permanent 10%.
Okay, I don't know, I don't know what your particular situation is, but I can tell you from the perspective of the Utilities Authority, prior to the implementation of the Smart Growth Plan, we've done 10-year projections, 20-year projections, and we've put, I mean, again, I'm speaking from the Utilities Authority, but I know that also the Jersey American Water Company put in literally tens of millions of dollars in infrastructure improvements to upgrade treatment capacities. I know New Jersey American is doing the same thing, to upgrade meter reading stations, and I mean, all different sorts of stuff. So, and like Stan was saying before, that's something that the DEP, I mean, we've been having weekly conference calls with the DEP for the last 3 months, and that's something that's part of this plan, to adequately supply new development with water and sewer services. So, I don't know what the 10% reduction in water usage was in the Fairways, I can't speak to that, but I can tell you from the perspective of the Utilities Authority that we're well here to be able to adequately supply. And you know what? And if you can't supply it, then guess what? You can't build it. That's all. Right? If the capacity is not there, you can't build. That's how it goes. And then you'll have to drill your own wells if that's what you have to do.
Will the infrastructure be in before the shovel hits the ground, or will we have to wait till the people are living there and we have more traffic before we have roads? What comes first?
As far as I know, the county is implementing to make turning lanes on Grove Street. County, I think, is making turning lanes on Grove Street. Is that correct?
I think we heard that from, I'm not sure who said that yesterday, but who represented that. But I believe that that's the case, but I can't speak for that. I mean, I don't know that personally.
The county's in the midst of drawing up the plans now.
Well, I just want to answer the question as to the point about when the sequencing of the infrastructure. Certainly that there's going to, as part of development approvals, that there's going to be a requirement for certain infrastructure to be in place, and certainly the water, the sewer infrastructure, all that's got to be put in place. In terms of the road improvements, I want to be very clear on the TID. The way the TID works is that there's a Transportation Improvement District Plan, which has identified a variety of different necessary improvements to intersections and roadways. Those improvements To the extent that they're not a direct obligation as off-track improvements that the developer will have to do, if they're being funded as part of the Regional Transportation Improvement District, the funding for that, once the funding's in place through the contributions, that those improvements are going to be taking place. So the funding there needs to be a certain amount of development activity that needs to take place for those improvements. However, having said that, the plan does provide for a prioritization of the critical improvements that have to take place first. So it's not like, well, we distribute the money all across, but and then eventually when the pot rises to a certain extent, we're going to be able to do all the different improvements. There'll be targets and prioritization for initial improvements, critical improvements need to be taking place. And there is going to be, as I mentioned yesterday, a public share of that. So it's not just the developers that are paying for it. So the township does have an opportunity to be able to direct the monies and funds into areas where are prioritization. You've heard that the township also pays for a consultant to do a transportation plan for the township as well. So all that kind of works together, the circulation plan, the transportation improvement district, and your transportation plans for the township work together to establish the prioritization of funding and getting those improvements in place.
Any other questions, David?
In the master plans, you called a vision statement, which stated to encourage growth and development in appropriate sections consistent with established land use. And then at the end of that, it says at the end of it, more protection of the township's natural resources. I'll give an example, which is the Eagle Ridge was a natural protected piece of land. Now we're trying now to put houses up there or buildings. How is this protecting natural piece of land?
Are you talking about, which, are you talking about a specific?
Ridge Golf Course and the adjacent festival. How are we protecting natural, and this is ED rule, it is natural governing. Natural resources. And if you build there, it's no longer a natural resource. What are your plans for that area? That's the 4th Street from Massachusetts.
It's basically finding a balance between development and protection of natural resources. What the Smart Growth Plan called for is a balance in terms of providing for compact development so that you would provide new growth in appropriate locations rather than sprawl development. That's how this plan protects the natural resources. Sure, there's any kind of development will involve some clearing of land, but and you have to always provide for such kind of growth. But you want to do it in a very reasonable, beneficial manner, and the compact development, providing a mixture of uses as appropriate, and so that people don't have to travel and people can be near the services is a way of protecting natural resources, and that's how.
On this plan, you studied what the amount of cars on certain roads will be like on 4th Street. We estimate it'll be an extra 2,000 to 3,000 cars. That's still in the middle lane. It'll still be a problem there. When you say on some of the properties that you've written on, has there been any study what the traffic density would be?
Not as part of this master plan process in terms of specific traffic study.
Mr. Herzl?
But again, if you're talking about providing for development in appropriate locations, then that's a way of cutting down on traffic And we talked about already, I think it's already been talked about, the traffic impact, the development fees, that's going to help pay for those improvements that will to address that and mitigate those.
You're saying more houses, make for better traffic?
Mr. Herzl.
I understand that. By putting in more houses, we'll have better
I
traffic.
understand what you're saying, yeah.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Let me clarify.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
You asked me to provide some additional information last night
Okay, that will be later.
during the deliberations. Would you like me to brief that?
No, after.
I have a question for Kimberly. So last night we talked about that we're ultimately going to move a motion to adopt the entire plan at once we have a full document in front of us. So this zoning map is one aspect of the master plan. My understanding was that we're basically just going to have like an acknowledgement of this is either the zoning map that we're going to be utilizing for now, and then we're going to move forward to review the rest of the master plan because there's a lot more to review.
Right.
So, are we, again, my understanding is we're not really doing a motion like to vote on anything, we're just acknowledging that this is the base map and then we're moving forward. Is that?
Right, you can make a motion to adopt these changes in the meantime until an entire plan is adopted as a whole, to acknowledge the changes, to accept what has already been proposed, and that there may be additional changes throughout these discussions before the entire master plan as a whole is adopted.
I would like to say something on tonight's testimony, so I cannot speak. So I would like to speak before you make the motion on concerns that you made tonight on the testimony. If you're telling me that you don't want me to speak, I'll step down.
There will be a public portion later. This was just a continuation of the board's deliberations from last night. Mr. Trescott was clarifying some of the issues which were brought up last night for the board's consideration. This is part of their deliberations.
Me as a member of the public, this tonight was a total eye-opener from yesterday. It's not the same testimony, and I understand things better today, and I have the map that I was able to follow, and I like to speak on it before they make some kind of informal motion. But if the chairman tells me to step down, I'll step down. So you're telling me that I shouldn't speak, I can't speak?
We're not making a final vote. It's just like an acknowledgement today, we're making a final vote next week or two.
But I would like to speak on this.
On this, you'll have to speak on this.
Thank you.
Okay, did you have a motion?
I just want to clarify, there was this section that we brought up before on James Street, had R10A last night, and that's not, that allows for duplexes on 10,000 square feet. I just want to clarify that we spoke about duplexes on 12,000 square feet, not 10,000 square feet. So I just want that to be incorporated into this map, that corner of James and Cross Street, that's all it is. Last night it was an R10, it was R10A last night, and that's not the case. Correct.
I'm mad at that. With some of the changes before we make an acknowledgement.
Everybody, please be quiet in the audience. So, Mr. Randall, please.
I mean, I get that this is a base where we're starting, but I think before we acknowledge that this is going forward, I want to see some of the changes incorporated. Maybe it's the Tuesday night next week that's in these plans. You know, like, I think Justin brought up a couple of items here. It should be on the map that we're adopting. That's where
I don't know that, okay, I mean, I only know this item, which last night was R10A, which is not the case. I don't know the other ones.
But, okay, so I'm referring to, I just read the letter real quick. I know you don't want to hear about letters, but it has to do with the map, so we understand we're starting with this map. I just want to.
Okay, so,
Mr. Chairman?
so why don't we do this? And the chairman's okay with it. Why don't we, okay, thank you very much. We've heard all the zoning changes. Put this map aside right now.
And we're done, the way I'm feeling, that we're done with the land use.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's actually, I was going to agree with Justin on that, that my understanding, based upon our direction, was that we needed to have additional information about and clarification based upon the discussion yesterday, that whatever action the board takes, and my understanding was it was really just kind of an acceptance of this as being part of the draft master plan, that it was a corrected and clear version of the proposed zoning that's part of the draft to be discussed and ultimately voted on next week. That's my understanding.
And if there's going to be additional information presented to us next week, then we'll consider it next week.
We make a motion or not? Or won't we stop by the estimate?
You can make a motion now and supplement it later if you get additional information, or you can table it as Justin suggested and vote on it as a whole. It's up to the board.
So we voted on the whole land use development?
Just the map.
There's 323 more pages.
There are additional,
Even if we vote tonight, it's not the final vote, it's just.
No,
an
just
additional vote,
the
based on
draft
the work.
of the map, an acceptance and acknowledgement of these changes. And again, of course, you can supplement and amend
Everything
up
could be-
until the final vote.
All these changes, is there an explanation for every single one?
Yes, before.
No.
before you-
Mike, you can't hear.
What I said was, I'm not comfortable voting until I have a full understanding of what all these changes.
Mike,
That's right.
speak to the mic. Mike.
Put it all together? Okay, so I'll take that recommendation. Okay, so we'll continue, we won't go. Okay, so going on please be quiet. We'll continue now with the subcommittee reports. I think we'll start first with the senior committee, subcommittee summary. Stan, are you going to move the report? Marty, are you going to move? Sure. The senior committees, subcommittee summary.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dan. You asked about the senior community needs subcommittee, and as from the Master Plan Advisory Committee, I recognize that a report of the senior needs committee. I can't speak to this report because I did not attend any of the meetings. I was not part of any deliberations, but I will just quickly highlight the summary synopsis of the report, which is an appendix within the master plan. And two of the recommendations within their report were included in the master plan. The senior needs committee, senior community needs subcommittee met several times, and they evaluated what works and what doesn't work in Lakewood, and they made several recommendations to the planning board. Some of the criteria they evaluated had to do with municipal services, emergency services and equipment, quality of healthcare facilities, different senior services, availability of transportation, availability of shopping, houses of worship, restaurants, etc., in their proximity to the age-restricted communities, and the general quality of life. So there's specific concerns of the, and I'm not going to go in detail, but that the number one, that the Lakewood has a policy to reimburse age-restricted communities regarding for snow and ice remediation. The subcommittee recommends the township enter into agreement with the age-restricted community to allow the community to select a contractor to perform the work, but have the contractor build the township rather than the age-restricted community. And so that the township would negotiate a price and payment schedule based on a scope of work that's established by the age-restricted community.
What difference does it make right now? What's the township's paying regardless?
Yeah, I guess they wanted, it sounds like they want to do it through the township, I guess, maybe. They think it's maybe better, more efficiency and cost savings. That's what it sounds like, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't say that specifically, but that's reading between lines. So.
Then why would the recommendation be that the township choose the contractor and the township negotiate the says that someone else is allowed to choose who the township negotiates. Subcommittee recommends the township enter an agreement with the industry between the allowed community to select a contractor and the contractor.
Have the contract to build the township directly.
So it's the same amount of money being in the township?
I have a question, Mr. Franklin. The township does not pick up any garbage in any senior community? So like private roads, what's the private roads? Is that the reason they can't pick up?
No, it's picked up.
It's a good word. Mine.
Because here it says that the township just reimburses them to pick up by private contractors. For snow and ice.
Yeah, there you go.
So the township does not do the snow and ice on the city?
No.
Okay.
It's a private road.
For the private, so the township cannot accept snow
What
and
we did, we took the exact cost of the snowstorm. We took the exact cost of the snowstorm. We took the total mileage that we covered and raised the price of our cost of the mileage that we plowed. Then we gave the same credits to the development for however many miles that they had as what it cost us.
No longer being done that way.
Can I clarify? Firstly, I want to say that Bill Hoppe actually chaired this committee. And I heard today that his wife passed away, so our thoughts and prayers with Bill Hoppe. And Bill knows that he was the first chairman of any subcommittee to actually compile his report. So I always thank Bill for that he was actually very proactive in compiling his report. And he did a lot of work on this. And I know he's been struggling with the help of his wife for a long time now. So our thoughts and prayers to Bill. But my understanding of this is that and anybody from the Fairways can correct me if I'm wrong, because I obviously don't know the Fairways, but the Fairways negotiates their own prices, as do other adult communities, for snow and ice remediation. The township of Lakewood, as other municipalities, reimburses the adult community for the cost of what it would have cost the township to remediate their snow and ice. But many times what happens is that it actually costs the Fairways a lot more than what it would have cost the township to remediate the snow and ice. So what this report recommends is that the township reimburse the Fairways for their actual cost. In other words, whatever they pay their contractor, right? Whatever they pay their contractor, that's what this report recommends. I just want a little help from the people with the Fairways. That's what this recommends, that the township actually reimburse them dollar for dollar, as opposed to just what it would have cost the township to pay. That's what this report recommends. That's what was recommended in the Master Plan Advisory Report.
Why should the township negotiate, instead of the cities negotiating, the best price?
So actually, that's part of the recommendation, that instead of the adult community negotiating the price, the township actually negotiated the price with the contractor. So it's a give and take for both parties, so the township would then take reign of the negotiations and hopefully negotiate a better price than what the Fairways have gotten themselves.
What doesn't make sense to me, and I want to hear an explanation, I'm hoping to hear an explanation. I don't understand if the adult community is picking the contractor, how do you ask the township to now negotiate with that contractor? They're restricted to do that.
So apparently, and again, not with, going back to my memory, but apparently and this was based on practices of other surrounding municipalities. I think Bill brought up to the subcommittee, and also we had a public portion on this on the senior community needs report, that I think it's Tom's River that actually does this with some of the adult communities, possibly Brick. So it wasn't like this committee reinvented the wheel on this practice. It's actually practice in other major municipalities. I think that's where it came from. And this was adopted by the advisory board as a recommendation.
So how does the township hold the contractor to normal prices?
What guarantee do we have of getting the best price? I think the township should have some input and negotiate to get the best price.
Again, this was a recommendation of this committee, and that's what we're here to deliberate.
I'll open up some for public. I'll just go through it. Okay? I think just number one, the township should have some input negotiate with the contractor, who the contract is, and try to negotiate for the best price. And make sure that they no, they never get the pay, they get the pay not to negotiate. I think they should negotiate also, that we should have the best price for the taxpayers. I think that should be added to my recommendation. Okay, number 2. Please be quiet, you cannot hear them.
Number 2 is effective overdevelopment on emergency services. So the committee obviously feels that overdevelopment is a major concern, and they're concerned about the impact of density on traffic and quality of life, and also the increased roadway congestion, impact access of medical personnel to the age-restricted communities, and the movement of patients to medical facilities. Emergency evacuation is a related concern. So despite emergency response times being cited as good, the subcommittee recommends emergency responders to be in more proximity to age-restricted communities, and recommends deeding property at 1536 Massachusetts Avenue for an emergency response annex.
What's currently on that property?
I believe it's a vacant structure.
It's a vacant structure?
No, there is no structure, it's vacant public land.
Okay, one at a time. It's vacant public land, and we're recommending doing what on that property?
That it be deeded for an emergency response annex. So it'd be something that's more proximate to the age-restricted community.
Like we have on Pine Street, the ambulance,
Yeah, so it's also better response time.
Okay. And then it's township property. Okay.
That's what I'm told.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Okay.
Yeah, and we did include that in the. We did include that in the as a recommendation within the community facilities plan.
Number 3.
Incompatible development, it's a related issue to number 2 about incompatible development around age-restricted communities. Subcommittee finds there's absolute need to protect age-restricted communities from some uses on properties that abut age-restricted communities. Particularly, that schools should not be permitted abutting uses. The subcommittee recommends strengthening ordinance 2015-35, where schools are a not permitted use, and make variances and waivers not permitted in the R40 zone district.
So what's this one now that's running 2035? What does it say there?
I believe that's the R40B ordinance that was overturned.
Again, for notice reasons.
Right.
This is a summary that Marty put together of the actual subcommittee report, which is included in the master plan draft. I just want to point out that this matter was deliberated extensively between the subcommittee members and also the public hearings. The subcommittee consisted of four people. This senior lead subcommittee, and the campus across the street was discussed, which is now not part of the zoning map anymore. And some of the issues that particularly the fairways has with some of the schools that are adjacent to the fairways. There were concerns about some of the boys venturing into private property, into people's backyards, and that's a real concern. The subcommittee, and in the report it says was split on this, and that if a consensus wasn't reached on what should happen adjacent to these senior communities, whether or not schools should be permitted or not permitted. There were some that said that it's beneficial for schools to be adjacent to senior communities, and some said it's detrimental. But a big issue was that you do have a problem where you do have school children, whether it's elementary school or high school, venturing into private property. That's a problem that the township really has to deal with. I don't think it's something that the township can just hide behind. And again, I don't mean to speak out of place, but I'm speaking about this only because I attended all these meetings and we had extensive discussion about it. It's a real issue. I don't know if you do have schools there that are existing, And I don't know if we enforce, if there's going to be, you know, additions to these schools, or there's got to be better enforcement, you know. I don't know if it's huge fences, boys can't, I don't know what that is, but, well, buffers, you know, trees don't really work because boys go off in the trees. But it's a real, I want the board to understand it's a real concern of the communities that are adjacent to these properties.
That's why we should have a school zone.
Yeah.
Well, that's. I think that's something we're gonna talk about during the course of this meeting. But trees don't work in blocking the school children.
For quality of senior life, Subcommittee feels there's a greater opportunity to more aggressively involve the senior population in life of its community. The Lake Carasalcho Recreation Area is severely underutilized by seniors, according to the Subcommittee. However, no recommendation is given to improve the seniors' desire to use this facility. Recommendations were provided for two separate aspects. One is the Lakewood downtown. There's the appearance of Clifton Avenue storefronts and the perception of less than senior-friendly downtown is a deterrent to active participation in civic events such as school board and other meetings and entertainment such as offered at the Strand Theater. Steps should be taken to develop a more senior-friendly environment with restaurants, coffee shops that offer dining opportunities around the Strand Theater that are available before and after theater hours. Secondly, the Lakewood branch of the Ocean County Library is underutilized by the senior population. It said that the Brick Library is 3 miles closer than the Lakewood Library to most age-restricted communities. Seniors in the Sherrock quarter indicate they use the Lakewood Library would use the Lakewood Library if its facilities and parking were expanded.
Thank you. Any questions from any board members?
So are there any specific recommendations for, let's say, around Lake Carasalcho or for the downtown in case for certain uses, make it more fun for consumers? Or is it just a general statement that Lake Carasalcho is underutilized?
Yeah, just a general statement and opinion.
So do you have any ideas, or is this not the right method, not the right time for ideas? What is, how do we get it?
The senior needs sort of, it crosses several different elements. It could be part of the recreation plan element to provide, possibly some activities that would, make it more senior friendly and could invite more participation. But I didn't have any specific recommendations.
Right now, the Lake Carasalcho, I don't need to walk down to the lake for seniors. The cars are on the road way down. I don't think you can do it. We have to be more considerate for seniors. Maybe the traffic patterns going down the lake or any other questions, any board members? Okay, seeing none, we'll open it up to the public.
Sir, just state your name and address for the record.
And last night we were sworn to, I was sworn last night, do I need to be sworn again tonight?
No, please, go ahead and say it.
Okay. My given name is Frederick Robison, R-O-B-I-S-O-N, often referred to as Rob, 79 Eagle Ridge Circle in Lakewood.
Do you swear or affirm that the statement you make before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Evening, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again tonight. Again, I will attempt to do this as quickly as I can in the deference of not being here.
We can't hear you.
Well, let's see if I can get even closer to the mic.
It's open to the public only on the senior report.
All right.
We spoke about this, let's deal with this and we'll go on to the next report.
Well, I will address the senior report.
And open it up to the public at the end for anything that zone maps and
Well, last night I was asked during the deliberations to provide additional information related to the zone map.
Can I just, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm asking Kimberly. time, to make a recommendation of how many other reports do we have to go through, or do we have in the agenda? I think we have the downtown, what else do we have?
Transportation, downtown.
Okay, so we have a few things to go through. Karen, do you want to do the public afterwards?
Tuesday is scheduled for whatever reports get carried, any additional comments, and any other aspects of the draft master plan, which the planner thinks is important.
That would be next week, next Tuesday.
That's
But for
next
tonight,
week, yes.
We have these
For
other things to
tonight,
go
it's
through.
senior needs, community, parks and open space, transportation, and downtown.
Chairman, do you want to do a public portion after we go through?
So let's finish the report.
I'm sorry, I think it's just going to be.
It's easier than ever to speak on all three.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's temporary close for the public. We'll go on to the next report.
Okay.
Those are the three reports.
So I can speak on this subject?
No one's speaking on anything.
What?
Let me finish all the two reports and then we'll open the public.
So we'll have to speak on everything, and you'll give 4 minutes on everything. This is not enough. That's true. Thank you.
I just want to finish all the two reports and then we'll be open to the public to speak about anything we spoke about tonight.
Tonight, okay.
Okay, so please be quiet another few minutes and we'll be open to the public. Okay, let's just identify which report we're going to next.
Parks and open space, Mr. Chairman, is next on the agenda.
Hold on, let's just get the right.
It should be the last one in your packet.
Okay, Parks and
Summary.
open space.
Okay. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, the Parks and Open Space Subcommittee summary report. Again, this was also chaired by Mr. Hopday, who did a superb job and submitted his report very early. The Parks and Open Space Subcommittee was formed to assist the Master Plan Advisory Committee to identify existing parks, open space, recreation opportunities, and provide recommendations for enhancements. The subcommittee had several meetings and identified the following recommended actions. I'll quickly breeze through, there's 10 of them. The Lakewood should better maintain the recreation facilities that they have already, including improvements to pavements and walkways, maintenance and striping, etc. Cost analysis may help to identify priority areas. 2, Lakewood should secure funding for both existing and new proposed recreational facilities. This could be accomplished by practice of the following policies: establish a recreation trust fund, or require a recreation fee for each new building permit, for example, $25 per building permit. C, establishing a line item in the budget for maintenance, repair, replacement of facilities at each park. And D, providing routine maintenance, routine monitoring of available funds. 3, ensure that all existing recreation facilities are adequately serving the needs of the community. The township should examine its parks to ensure that the parks and the fields are being utilized to the maximum potential. Usage permits for parks and fees need to be issued in and by Lakewood. 4, the township should consider establishing a recreation commission to help oversee the parks and open spaces. 5, post the conditions of the parks on the township website, for example, out of order, under repair, good, better, best. 6, encourage the establishment of a recreational suggestion box on the township website. 7, allow electronic scheduling on the township website to reserve parks and open space facilities where relevant. 8, encourage and adopt a park program for groups and sponsors. And 9, consider converting and/or preserving Kennedy Boulevard right-of-way for parkland. This includes the portion of the right-of-way from Squonkam Road in the west to the municipal boundary with Brick and Howe on the east. And then 10, identify park needs that are in close proximity to new and proposed residential developments. The areas Cross and Prospect Street Triangle. Identify the township-owned properties for potential parkland. The second area is Drake, White, and Cross Street area. The third is James Street area. And the fourth is the Oak Street corridor, more recreation space is needed. Additionally, vacating the right-of-way in certain areas is necessary where proposed pocket and linear parks can be completed. That's it for recreation.
How many parks does Lakewood have? And how much of the land, percentage of the land is parks?
I don't have specific number of parks off the top of my head, but I believe the percentage of land that's reserved for parks and open space is in the realm of about 25% of the land area.
Marty, everything that you read right now, this is up to the township committee to adopt the ordinances accordingly to what is recommended over here.
Well, the planning board can support these recommendations so they add a little more weight to it.
If we support the recommendations, and we're recommending it, the township has to make ordinances according to this.
Yeah, for the most part. It's a lot operational and administrative. But
Okay, most of these recommendations are not ordinance related. Most of these recommendations are really best practice items when you have the amount of parks that we have in town. And Ally, I think, was on that subcommittee too. Ally was on that subcommittee. We talked about the fact that you could drive past parks and you see, basketball nets that are all ripped up. I mean, simple things that the township can do just to enhance the quality of the parks and to encourage people to utilize them because we happen to have beautiful parks in town. We have a lot of beautiful parks that we feel are underutilized. When it comes to scheduling sports events, there are various groups that play soccer, football, field hockey in the parks. We had actually a representative of a group that he says he has about 700 boys that he schedules sporting activities for every year, and he said he has a real issue in scheduling. That's why we recommended that you be able to schedule things on the website. Simple things that can enhance the parks in town.
This is our recommendation that the
Yeah,
township.
these are not ordinance related. These are just things that the township should do.
We're recommending the township to enhance.
Absolutely
the quality of
right.
life.
Absolutely right.
Thank you.
Alex.
Yeah, I think one thing that was repeated often at the subcommittee meetings was the lack of, and Mr. Franklin was just mentioning it, the lack of staff and available funding to adequately maintain the facilities that we have now, let alone expand potentially in the future. And one idea that was really focused on was, aside from new developments which may be required to build more parks or open space in accordance with the ordinance, the possibility of enacting a new fee that would be attached to, for example, every building permit that comes in is required to pay a $10 fee that goes into a Parks and Recreation Management Fund or something along those lines. And just that small fee being a supplement towards the maintenance of the current township
Eventually, there'll be
facilities.
enough money that maintains all
Right.
our parks. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there was also one that's not ordinance or administrative. It was the future use of the Kennedy Boulevard right-of-way, and that was, I think, a big discussion of that subcommittee about potential use. The township committee is still considering how to address that, and what type of use, whether it be for circulation or for recreation.
And
or both.
that's going to come up in the transportation report also. That's the unimproved portion of Kennedy Boulevard from Squancum Road, basically east of the brick border. There's a 120-foot right-of-way currently, and the transportation report and this report discourages vacating any portion of that 120-foot right-of-way to improve the right-of-way, to increase traffic flow, and also to utilize whatever, because you don't need 120 feet for a road, to utilize whatever you have left, which is going to be a lot, for similar to what you have around the lake, and possibly even more. Bike paths, walking paths, running paths, additional playgrounds. You have those exercise things by the lake, which we all like to pretend that we use, right? So things like that, which you can easily do on that corridor, and that can actually be utilized by residents of Brick, Lakewood. It can really be something beautiful, and that's recommended in this Parks and Open Space report and also in the transportation report, not to vacate any portion of that 120-foot right-of-way.
Thank you. You know, let's continue.
Could I speak on this? I have some input, very important input.
10 minutes.
It seems like you're treating the public, this is a public participation, and the public should be able to give something.
Another few minutes. we'll finish
Just
another-
put everybody by the end, it seems like you're looking good, citizen.
All right. Another comment. Dave.
Chairman, a question for TNM. I don't know if you found, there is a right-of-way, it's actually a corridor running from Lakewood to Point Pleasant. It's wide enough, actually runs right near 88, which a section of it could be used for parks, and uses. But I know the county, there is a right-of-way that runs that distance. Where we look out.
Yeah, no, I'm not familiar with that. I'll have to talk about it, yeah.
Okay, let's just finish the last two reports, then we'll open it up. We have the transportation report and downtown report. Let's just explain it, and then the public will come on.
Yeah, the Transportation Subcommittee summary report, it's not as easily read into the record, but that subcommittee conducted several meetings and also a public outreach meeting in November of 2016. The summary synopsis that the board has lists the different problems and concerns that the subcommittee found and recommended solutions. So the different, I'll just sort of I'll read off the problems and concerns rather than go through it back and forth. But so school bus traffic is one concern, and then solutions are suggested there. 2 is coordination with Ocean County regarding county roads. 3, traffic flow in the downtown area needs to be addressed. Traffic congestion overall, it mentions here the intersection of Route 88 and Clifton Avenue. 5 is connectivity, basically the north-south connection that we've been talking about, and mentions Vine Street and Arlington avenues are not well connected. 6, traffic volumes on Route 9, which, can't say more about that. 7 is the RSIS, that's the Residential Site Improvement Standards, given unique issues in Lakewood, need for wider streets, accommodate buses and other vehicles, have parking on both sides. 8 is the Transportation Improvement District, that's been discussed tonight and last night. 9, connector roads, additional connections are needed, and that actually goes to the north-south connection. Let me see. And then other actions of the Transportation Subcommittee are recommended that are not mentioned in the above that I just discussed. 1, parking, providing for parking in the downtown. It suggests several solutions, providing a downtown parking lot, creating a fund for parking development in the downtown, and to evaluate the current township parking requirements to help address that. 2, mass transit, acquiring funding to increase the shuttle bus service, the existing bus service. B, endorse the establishment of rail service in Lakewood through the MOM line. C, increase transfer routes and service frequency for mass transit options. 3, bicycle and pedestrian and bicycle circulation. Bicycle paths are encouraged where traffic and bikes can be separated. Second part under that is to evaluate the appropriateness of converting the Kennedy Boulevard East right-of-way, which we just talked about. C is sidewalks should be maintained, improved, and supplemented where appropriate. And D, township should pursue safe routes to schools, grant opportunities for improvements to sidewalks in and around school areas. That completes that report.
I'll just add that I would recommend that the township should not vacate any vacant streets. That we should try to develop as many streets as possible, open them up. We need more streets out there that are open. Route 9 is congested, Broad Street is congested. We need more roads out there.
And Mr. Chairman, and there is a circulation plan element within the master plan document that you have reviewed, which is an inventory of all the roads, and assessment of different issues and recommendations. No, I just wanted to mention that there's, it's those, that's addressed as part of the master plan.
This report has a recommendation for a bridge over Lake Carousel. I don't know if anybody else doesn't like that idea, but I personally don't like that. So can we scrap that? Board okay with that?
Pummel.
It's a nice bridge.
I personally don't like that idea. I think Lake Carousel is one of the nicest things we have in town. I don't think it should be touched personally.
I think it's intended to be a walking bridge.
Well, whatever it is, I'm just, let's go out.
It says both, but it says vehicular and pedestrian. So I don't know, but I think DEP might have a problem with it too.
Okay, let's just read through the downtown committee, then I'm opening it up. Let's address the issues that there are. And what the thoughts.
The downtown subcommittee, had several meetings, September, and February, I guess members of the public attended both meetings. There's a table provided in the synopsis that the board has, and in the same way I'll address the problems and concerns that were outlined, and the table has problems, concerns, and recommended solutions. One being the old school look, that many of the buildings in downtown are older style structures, require modernization, contemporary features and updates. Two, latest technology, that the latest communication technology is provided in downtown. Three, a no parking downtown ordinance. Some areas of downtown have severe deficiency in available parking spaces, and the B2 zone district does not require off-street parking for new businesses. And so the recommendations offered in that regard. Four, traffic and bottlenecks. It mentions four different areas, Clifton Avenue and Main Street. Second is Clifton Avenue southbound to 5th Street. The third is South Clifton northbound. And D, various portions of 4th and 2nd Streets.
Yeah, there you go.
It's the same thing. I'm just saying that B and C is the same.
Yeah.
One is Clifton going southbound from 5th, and one's going northbound. It's the same thing. Yeah.
5 is additional parking. Parking for customers is always an issue in downtown. And 6, parking enforcement. And there's been a long debate about the effective enforcement. And the downtown committee also offered the following additional recommendations and solutions. Talks about as a maintain the town square for public gatherings, but possibly using it for temporary parking on selected occasions and as necessary. The second is to encourage development of alleyways to alleviate congestion resulting from deliveries on heavily trafficked business streets where possible. 3, consider relocating the municipal building to Cedar Bridge Avenue, and I believe there was some split on that recommendation, as I recall. 4, consider developing a parking structure in the downtown. 5, investigate existing parking areas to identify opportunities for increased parking. That's basically take your existing parking areas and see where you can add parking areas, parking spaces. 6, evaluate the appropriateness of implementing a business improvement district as a tool for commercial revitalization. And 7, review and evaluate municipal off-street parking requirements to ensure that they're up to date and properly address parking generation. That's pretty close to what the traffic transportation committee's recommendation. And that completes the report.
Thank you. Yes. We'll take a 5-minute break. Right after the break, I'll open it to the public and we'll talk about zoning maps, senior report, parks and open report, transportation board, or downtown report. And we'll have 5 minutes. Please be quiet, we will proceed. I will open it right now to the public. Please stand. You going?
Yeah, I'm going. Why not?
You want to, you were first. Let him speak.
I got. You want to give me out 2 minutes? 2 minutes. Yeah, you want? I'm sorry.
Well, he was just, he was standing.
You good? You want?
I don't care.
You want to go ahead or not? I'm running out of time, so it's your call.
I started and I told you to say, I'd like to go first.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name hasn't changed. It's still me, and I'll even stand closer to the microphone.
Yesterday, Mr. Jackson was swearing or affirming.
Yes, I swore.
And I've already been sworn in.
You did it right?
Yes, I did, before, so I don't need to put him under oath.
Sorry. Shh, Mr. Robinson.
Last night during the board deliberations on the zoning map, Mr. Jackson asked if I might provide some additional information on what appeared to be some issues that had not been addressed or possibly had been mismarked. And again, I do not criticize T&M. They can only deal with the information they gave. They were given.
You all received it. Thank you.
Okay. But for the record, I need to quickly go over them.
No problem.
Okay.
Please.
The tract of land that I refer to as All County Exteriors has been located in an M1 zone. The map showed it to be in an R10 zone. Now with these changes, the M1 zone is no longer contiguous and it needs to reflect its existing status. So that would be yet another change to the proposed map. The area commonly referred to as the Masters, which is the final section of the fairways of Lake Ridge, happens to be the street I live on. As shown on the proposed map is R10. There are no open lots in that area. If the intent of the board is to properly define established areas, which was a theme on a great many of the comments that Mr. Truscott made, then that section on Cross Street should really be R40 or R40C.
Mr. Robinson, just 1 second. Marty, I think at the end, you'll answer if there are any changes, if you're accepting it or not.
Okay.
And if yes, we'll adopt it by the next map that you give to us. Okay.
Okay.
Please continue, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you. Related to the master's comment, the map shows the remainder of the fairways, which was approved in major subdivision in 1997, is R40, when in fact it's really R40C. That is a minor change, but if we're trying to get the map accurate, let's do everything that we can possibly do. Related to that, related to the previous comment, there's a section in the draft master plan called non-municipal park, recreation, and open space areas. All 3 of our golf courses in the Blue Cross Stadium should be included in that section, and there should be, I believe and recommend, a recreation and open space zone. Now, why would I include the Eagle Ridge in that? If you go back to the original CAFR permit, and this goes to the question Mr. Garfield asked related to preservation, a term and condition of the original CAFR permit, which then also became a term and condition of the major subdivision approval, because that resolution said all other state requirements, was that a very large number of acres be permanently recorded as deed restricted areas. The deed restriction is the document is about 153 pages long. That is a state-imposed term, and I believe that it is appropriate and necessary to include it in the identified preservation areas. This wasn't an optional thing. This was mandated by the state. The CAFR permit could not be issued until that document was filed. Unless I missed it, the former Lakewood Municipal landfill is not identified as anything. It may be a residential zone. With all due respect, a landfill where methane gas testing is still occurring should not be a residential zone. In my experience, landfills are typically their own unique zoning code, not residential, but they're typically their own unique code so that there's no suggestion or question about the accuracy of the information when potential developers or residents come to look at what the zoning map is like in their prospective town. A relatively small point, but I think important. Augusta Boulevard is a private road owned by the Fairways of Lake Ridge. It is used as a public roadway as a condition of a filed deed restriction predicated upon the continuation of the existence of the golf course. I don't know if that needs a map change, but I think it's an appropriate footnote that a private road is being used for public purposes based upon an agreed upon deed restriction. Catch my breath here. I'm thrilled that the planning board is working to correct the map to an as-is status for a number of the projects going back to 2007 and others. I also note that you are recommending or are prepared to recommend, I think is appropriate wording, some changes to rectify the confusion over invalidated ordinances. There were 2 or 3 examples that Mr. Truscott gave in that area. If that pattern is to be followed consistently, then I would argue that the R40B zone needs to be reinstated. With the impression that there are some misperceptions as to why that ordinance was adopted by our township elected leaders in the first place. Really, there are 2 corrections that need to be made. First is to reinstate the zone, and second is to remove the golf course from that zone. It was never intended to be included. There were really 3 reasons that this zone was created. The first was to reestablish a buffer lost as a result of the sewer line construction. The original intent for the fairways, the master sewer line, was to go down Cross Street, but that did not occur when parties other than the Kochs family builders did not follow through on the agreement to pay for the construction of the sewer line. As a result, about 50 feet of tree buffer had to be eliminated. That has facilitated some of the problems that Justin mentioned. The second was to prevent yet another debate. There was a proposal that fortunately did not make its way through the entire planning or zoning process to construct 3 5-story dormitories within 75 feet of approximately 20 homes. You could be on the 3rd floor and look right into the bedrooms or living rooms of certain homes.
We shut the cell phones.
Okay.
Let them phone me, please.
So again, it's really addressing an appropriate adjacent use of land. And the third, as Justin alluded to, is, we have a lot of wonderful schools in this town. I think it's a bell curve. We have some exceptional schools, a whole bunch in the middle that do a good job, and at the other end of the bell curve, some problems. There are unsupervised students, unsupervised dormitories, living in dormitories, no adults, who come out at all hours of night, playing basketball, walking through our backyards, looking in our windows. They're just being kids. They're not properly supervised, and the only way to discourage more of that behavior is to reestablish the R40B zone for those 3 reasons. I think it's appropriate, and it is not an affront to education or affront to the youth of our community. Ally mentioned 5 other differences. I did not include them in the report. That would have been repetitious. Beyond the numbers on the map, I think there are several items that are equally pertinent because these are links in a chain. The map is one piece, the definitions of the zones is another. There is the term non-family households that's used. There's some very large number of non-family households. I understand it's a rhetorical question, but what is a non-family household? That needs to be defined. And that leads to the point that I think it's appropriate and necessary to have a definition section in a master plan that is claiming to be comprehensive. We don't want to assume anything. We all know how that word is used. Related to the map, and it was discussed briefly in one of the committee reports, there is approximately a 9-acre tract of land referred to as 1536 Massachusetts Avenue. It is the former site of a school. That school is now relocated into a magnificent new facility. That land is vacant. It is owned by the township. And I would suggest that that tract be labeled PP or one of the appropriate uses for public purposes. Again, in one of the reports, there was a recommendation that it be used for a public safety annex. That is important to every taxpayer in Lakewood and every property owner in Lakewood. There are portions of Southwest Lakewood that are outside what's considered an ISO distance from a responding entity. And when you have homes and businesses outside ISO areas, ultimately the insurance rates for everyone in the community will go up. It is in our best interest to get a public annex, public facility, responders annex built at that 1536 location sooner rather than later. The property is big enough that we may be able to include some other uses. Mayor Coles asked that a survey be done in the adjacent areas. That survey has been completed, and we're now trying to organize some meetings with the leadership in the affected communities. But for the purposes of this project, it should be labeled as PP or some similar designation. It should not be R40. I think that it's also important, as I suggested last night, that there be work done to make sure that the detailed recommendations are consistent with the vision and strategic statements in the plan. For example, the first bullet in the vision statement is to encourage growth and development in appropriate locations and consistent with established land uses. The third statement under the land use strategy states, preserve and protect existing viable residential neighborhoods. These two statements need to correlate closely with any changes to the zoning map. And I'd offer one example to you. We have a well-established, wonderful neighborhood east of Massachusetts, north of Cross Street, called the Hearthstone neighborhood. The proposals are to change the zoning on a tract of land directly west of Cross Street to a much higher density, to 7.5 from 20. That is a significant change, and I suggest that that is inconsistent with the effort to protect existing neighborhoods. It's also important to point out that on that very tract of land, there is already an approval from our planning and zoning boards. It's been back and forth between the boards. If there's already an approval in place, why are we now changing the zoning? I also think that it's important to expand upon the discussion of the conditional use for schools. I would hope that the planning board truly understands the power of a conditional use. It is a way to address concerns that were voiced last night. And what I'm speaking specifically of is in almost all of the written descriptions of the zones, schools are a permitted use. And my request and recommendation is that they be changed to a conditional use. It addresses the opportunity, it then gives the appropriate board the opportunity to see if there are cutouts for school buses, to see if the children are safe, to see what the impact is on the neighborhood. And it would probably slow down this conundrum of the only buyers for certain tracts are schools, because they can build anywhere they want. I think a much more appropriate way to address the construction of schools and to ensure quality is to establish schools as a conditional use. And again, that is not an affront to the education of our youngsters. One technical point, but I think extremely important, is there are several tables related to the land use portion of the master plan. For example, in table LU1, which is a description of land use, the data that T&M was able to offer was based upon an old Mod 4 set of data. We just went through a complete reevaluation. That data needs to be updated so that it is correct. I find it curious that it only lists 85 parcels for schools, yet we have over 125 private schools in this town. Okay? There are more charitable tracts than there are schools. Again, in the effort of getting it right the first time, that needs to be improved. I've gone through that quickly. You did receive the written piece late in the day. Now, I think you asked Mr. Truscott to comment on. Okay, well, that's all my land use questions, and then I have comments on the other reports. Do you want to do that now?
No, continue.
Okay. Trying to go quickly here. Some of these I've already covered, but in the circulation and safety issues, the state of New Jersey passed a statute establishing the Lakewood School Transportation Authority, and that statute provided a very significant amount of money for the transportation of students in this town. That statute also required the construction of sidewalks. Didn't say you should, it said you will, okay? Regardless of what we think about the LSTA statute, the reality is it only lasts for 3 years. If the condition requirement of building sidewalks is not met, what reason does the state legislature have to continue the funding provided through the LSTA? And then we're back with an even bigger problem figuring out how to fund and transport students. So I think the construction of sidewalks needs to become a much, much higher priority for safety and for finance. I already mentioned the deed-restricted tree save areas that are a function of the CAFRA permit. If we're going to do a full and complete job of recognizing preservation areas, there are sanctuaries and animal habitats on the Eagle Ridge Golf Course that are recognized by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the New Jersey Audubon Society. To be accurate, they were established by the prior owner, but they exist. You can go out on the golf course today and see signs that say environmentally sensitive area, do not enter. They deserve to be recognized in a master plan. If I may, and I spoke with Mr. Franklin about this during the recess. He is completely correct that in his day there was a detailed formula that was used to reimburse not just the fairways but all of the age-restricted communities for ice and snow removal. All of the age-restricted community landowners pay the same property tax rate that everyone else pays, and then they seek reimbursement for the municipal service that the municipality is not providing. In recent years, that has gotten to the point where the reimbursement rate is far less than it should be based upon the formula that he used in his day. There are portions of that formula that are now not used. So in many respects, the seniors, the fixed income community, are paying twice for snow and ice removal. Now, to be clear, we're talking about the roadways. There is additional work done on the sidewalks and the driveways, and we understand that is the homeowner's responsibility. The fundamental point here is equity, and Justin is correct that this matter has been resolved successfully in adjacent towns, and Lakewood would do well to address this constructively and proactively, because it's getting to the point where people are starting to say, we have to fight this, and I'd rather talk about solutions than fights. I mentioned the emergency service need on 1536 Massachusetts Avenue, and I think that needs to be a very high priority before all of our insurance rates go up. In Murphy's Laws, I left something out, but I thank you for the time. If I think of it, I'll ask to come back.
Thank you very much. Okay, next.
Sure. Elliot Zacks, 260 Spruce Street in Lakewood. I affirm to say the truth and my opinion. I'm looking at the change. I'm sorry.
Do you swear or affirm that the statement you make before this board this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm. Thank you. But, sure, I'm looking at the change, the proposed changes out there, and change number, well, first of all, in the master plan. Oh, what's that? No, I stole it from somebody else, but, first of all, in the master plan, it calls for an R40A, which there's no proposed change on the R40A. So I don't know what happened, but in the book, it says R40A as a real R40 with no conditional uses, and there's not a single change over here that's recommended for an R48.
Which change number are you talking about right now?
No, so right now, I'm talking about within the book itself. In the book itself, they propose a new zone called an R48, which is not on any sort of proposed change. That's number one.
Okay, no problem.
Number two is, in the book, it doesn't speak about, it says all the new zones that they're going to propose, but the existing zone of R40-R20C is not included in that list. So it's an old zone that's not included in the new proposed zones, and there's a new proposed zone that's just not anywhere. Within the township itself, this R40-20C, there's only 3 sites within the whole town. There's only 3 areas within the whole town that's actually that zone. One of them is in the surrounding area on the change of number 36. Okay. Okay. So what they're proposing over here is to change it, number 36, to change it into an RM zone. Now, existing over there is the affordable housing, the Lakewood Commons, which is a cluster. However, they're adding on a lot more space to that to be townhouses. Now, what they're proposing, if you look at the map, what is being proposed, it's backing up to all the existing schools. They're taking all that land and they're turning that into a townhouse zone, which I strongly recommend not to do, because just the nature of the schools versus, there has to be some sort of buffer, and townhouses right behind our wedding halls isn't a smart idea. So I would really suggest that maybe they just keep that change, only this change into RM is only on the affordable housing and not expanded greatly. It also help in terms of the traffic, because as everybody knows, that whole Washington Avenue Gateway is totally backed up, basically the whole day now. So that would help out if there's, instead of a lot more area. Number 2 is on number 34, which is they want to switch to a R10A, they're trying to mirror, I presume, the townhouses that's going up across the street in the Oak Street corridor. That I would strongly recommend against, because again, you're just providing a lot more housing, a lot more townhouse housing, especially since right next door to it, you're proposing a typical R40, which is either going to be schools or single family, but it shouldn't be townhouses. That change number 34. Got me on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 3 is the only other part of the R40 is the R40-20C, which is where I live, which is the end of Spruce Street, this whole area around number 36. If we want to propose a change to a new zone of R40A, that would probably be the right place to do it, because that would actually be a true R40, and you wouldn't, that would be the right place in town, especially with all the congestion around it. So I'm suggesting that perhaps take that rest of that R40-20-C and make it into a new R48. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
I'll try my best.
so that would be more than 4 months.
I'll try my best to make it short, it's late.
Okay.
Shlomi Klein,
Do you swear or affirm that the statement you make before this board this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm. First of all, I was just observing the setup before when this gentleman, one of our elders was speaking.
I'm not that old.
No, I meant elders, an individual that we could look up to. That's what I meant.
Thank you.
I don't know why he was not on the master plan committee. He's so knowledgeable, more knowledgeable than a lot of members that wasn't the
mayor of the town.
So I just don't know why he was not put on, and we would have eliminated. But I was observing the way he spoke, and I was observing the T&M individual taking notes, and I did not understand exactly every question that he is proposing or asking, and I didn't feel that anybody is questioning him on anything. Usually when somebody makes a comment or a question in such a scope of so many things, they usually ask this, what did you mean with that? What do you mean with that? And none of it was asked, so I assume that most of it won't be addressed because nobody is interested in the comments that he made. And the way it was observed over here, it didn't look like any, that's the reason why that's my opinion, respectfully.
All gonna be, and Marty will.
I saw him marking down.
He's marking down and he'll address everything. I just
Okay.
fear that the public should have the right to speak, and he'll mark everything down, and then Marty, by the next meeting, will give an explanation of everything that was addressed.
So I could assume any comments that I make now will be addressed by this board.
He's writing
Okay.
it, yes.
Okay. So the first, I will not go in order because there was so many stuff discussed, but the first thing that I will discuss is about the Oak Street corridor special treatment that we're giving them again, and I'll explain to you what I'm talking about. There was a recommendation to vacate some paper streets. The chairman said, we shouldn't vacate any paper streets. Oak Street corridor, we should vacate. For what? For park and open space. Interesting, when it came to Kennedy Boulevard, we said we should not vacate these streets because of 120 wide. Why? Because we should have it for parks and open space. And Justin was even recommending some kind of bars. But I don't understand why when it comes to Oak Street corridor, we want parks, open space, and we said vacate these streets. And the same recommendation when you're talking about Kennedy Boulevard, how do we get open space with not vacating? So I'm not a big London, but I don't understand how the same recommendation could be duve pichoy. I'm sorry for my Hebrew. And you could say is, we want, it's like yesterday we said is, with increasing density, we will solve the problem of traffic. The same argument I hear today is, with vacating these streets, we'll get open space. It just, in the same token, you're saying it in a different one differently. And I'll explain to you what's going on. I hope the board is understanding me. My English is not perfect. I could speak Hebrew. What I think is happening is they came to the board already to try to vacate the streets, the Oak Street corridor guys. They got caught with a lie. What was the lie? They wanted to vacate the streets and keep, when you vacate the streets, they keep these streets to themselves. The township committee caught them on the lie and they didn't do it. Now, the reason is because even if you don't develop those streets, what I think it's wrong because it eliminates the grids, and we discussed this already how many times, but if you have these streets not used, it's technically open space, like you want to do by Kennedy Boulevard. Now, if you vacate the streets and I don't know how you do it that it doesn't go to the property owners. You'll make a quick claim deed, you'll make all the solutions. Who's going to maintain those properties? Oak Street corridor was established already. The individual lots, you have already the permits. How are you going to do to maintain the streets? Now we have open space with township right-of-ways. So the township technically has to maintain it. So just for to have the small bar that you had a solution in doing in Kennedy Boulevard, you could do the same solution over here. And if you can't do it over there, you can't do it over here. But you have these parks, and for this small thing, there's a lot of pockets over there that the township owns. And that is another point that I want to put. I'm going away from the Oak Street corridor special treatment. Why is there no recommendation that when township wants to sell an undersized lot or an oversized lot, why is there no recommendation to first look, maybe we shouldn't do it at a tot lot? We don't have enough, tot lot is the right word? I know the Rosh Hashanah could mean something else, but tot lot means the small lots that you do for pocket parks. So, what is the problem, Mr. Flansbaum? Please speak into the mic.
That's
Or Fulman.
I think they should run by any property they sell or want to try to vacate and not have any back in deals either. I agree with you.
Thank you. First time. We're becoming friends.
No road should be vacated.
I'm not talking about roads now. I'm talking about any lots that the township wants to sell. We have it next to Oak Street Corridor. They're looking now to do a private sale. By Oak Street Corridor, they're trying to sell that lot. Why don't you take that lot and put it for Oak Street Corridor parks? And not only Oak Street Corridor, we're missing parks in that side of town. The only thing that we're getting is more townhomes. No, all I'm saying is the township, I'm not trying to limit the township, but they should look into, before they're doing a private sale, maybe we could use it for open space. That's all I'm saying. And it's not in the, and I voiced this by the subcommittees, and for some reason, whatever I voiced doesn't go in. I was just trying, and everybody agreed with me over there, so I don't know why it didn't go into recommendations. Hopefully the planning board is much better listening to me. The next thing, I'm just not going in order, but I'll finish fast. Sidewalks. There's no recommendation, what I heard tonight, about sidewalks. Now, I know we have a traffic problem, and it's not being solved. The solution for a higher density traffic problem, you should sell it in the township of Chelm, or you change the name of this town and call it Township Lakewood the Chelm. But it doesn't make sense. Chelm is the town of fools, whoever doesn't know yet. The solution for traffic is make higher density. I just don't know. You know, I don't know how people verbalize that and express that in a public forum. I think it's ridiculous. But let's go away from that. The only thing that we could have is, horse and buggies is an option, bicycles is an option, but having places where to walk. If somebody doesn't want to drive and he wants safe passage, why shouldn't he have sidewalks? There's no recommendations in your report to actually pursue the township for putting in sidewalks. As far as transportation, this is a part of transportation. Sidewalks all over Route 9. You don't even know what you did. You made it the highest density in Lakewood. You made it on Route 9 South. There's pockets that doesn't have sidewalks, and I'm talking about
Construction, no sidewalks?
what?
On new construction, no sidewalks?
Yes, and I'll give you an example. The main entrance to Oak Street Corridor, the main entrance that everybody should walk through, has no sidewalks on either side. Not a sidewalk. And I was so happy to see a few days ago is that they started the other side, one of the sides, they started digging up this, whatever the land was over there, and sidewalks is going in. What happened was is no sidewalk went in. They wanted to put for the lights, for whatever, they were pulling a wire. So they dug up the ground, put it in sidewalk level, pulled the wire on the ground, and put 3 feet of sand back on that it should cover the wires. That we shouldn't, I was just putting sidewalks over there. You just dug it up and put back on the sand so that it's easier for them like this to pull the wires. And now when somebody wants to come in and do the sidewalks, he has to deal with the wires on ground level. I'm just trying to, in this planning board, I want to be politically correct, but in this case, because there's a danger, this you guys approved. You guys approved that development, and that's misconstruction. And he was sitting over here. I don't know if he's still sitting there. Actually, most probably he's outside, but he was one of the guys, the developers, that was sitting there in the back of the room, and he wants zoning changes. And a simple thing, putting in sidewalks, he was able with a loophole to get out of it, and he got out of it. Now I'm recommending something that you do a zoning change about sidewalks that is coming up constantly with Brian Flannery using the zoning to his advantage. Sidewalks, when you do a road, you gotta have sidewalks on both sides. Brian Flannery, the way he reads the zoning, and rightfully so, he's a planner, he has to save his client money. He reads is that you have to develop the sidewalks only on the side where they do construction. The other side, they don't have to do. I think this zoning should be changed to reflect that if somebody develops a road or does any infrastructure, he should have to do sidewalks on both sides. Again, typical Oak Street corridor, this is the problem. Over there, you don't have on either side. But even if you would have required him to do on one side, the zoning would not require him to do on the other side. Now you have people passing through when he developed that road. So the zoning should reflect that anybody that develops a paper street should have to put sidewalks on both sides. And this is a no-brainer. You know, I just don't, I really don't understand the sidewalk factor that didn't go into the master plan, because I wouldn't want to be on your spot. If you approve increased density, and somebody gets in danger on that, gets killed, a child gets killed, an adult gets killed, and it's indirect from your voting on it, technically it's your responsibility. So I wouldn't want to be in your place to have the pressure from the developers to improve stuff and then have to deal with the consequences to face those people. I will not go do what I did in the subcommittee. I got my message. Mr. Glieberman came over to me afterwards and he said this, he's very angry at me because I went after his family. I asked him, I went after your family? I don't know who your family is.
Don't go over there.
I shouldn't go there?
No, but I think it's duly noted, and I think we all agree with you that sidewalks is very, very important about the country.
Now, as far as the zoning changes, I was listening, and the way it was asked for T&M to explain the zoning changes was 2 requests asked from them. Who requested it, and why is the zoning change recommended? That, in none of them was explained. The only explanation that he had, again, he's doing his job, but the only explanation that he gave is that the advisory subcommittee recommended it. And now, I don't know if anybody over here knows the history of the advisory subcommittee. Half of it was developers, or their people that they, I will give you an example. Adam Pfeffer sits in the back of the room. He's for sure representing a developer. Then there was half seniors, people that represent the people of Lakewood. For some reason is the advisory draft from the subcommittee that was written, I guess it was adopted by that committee, was written by Mr. Lankry. It says no increased density. For some reason is he got sick, another lady over there, I think is Gil, got sick, and they had another member over there, I don't remember his name, got sick, also disappeared. And basically is, there was only one member of that represents the public stayed on that subcommittee, and interestingly is the whole draft changed. There's a different recommendation. So we could consider, okay, when you consider this advisory committee, when somebody mentions the advisory recommended, this is the developer's recommendation. Rightfully so, they have a right to recommend. I saw the seniors recommending their own master plan. Everybody could recommend, but to quote, that's a reason for change. The developers want to make more money. Rightfully so. It's a good reason. But specify it, that it's not the advisory committee that it sounds kosher, it's the developer's advisory committee. Now, I'm giving you an example about one of the recommended changes, is number 32. That is talking about Cross Street and Massachusetts Avenue. I'm sorry for my not pronouncing it right. That corner, okay, next to Hartstone. What was the reason? He didn't tell you, so I have to tell you. It was a closed meeting, but there was minutes afterwards, so we were able to look the minutes. The reasoning behind, in the minutes, if it's quoting the correct thing, what happened in the meeting, I don't know. But the reasoning behind that is that there is an approval on that land. It was the approval was a, what is it called, faculty housing. So there is a multi-family apartment building on that side approved already. So therefore if we have already from the planning board, from this planning board an approval, we should basically do everything like that, the whole section. What they failed to say, okay, what is the truth behind it? If somebody has an apartment building, why is he not building over so many years? The reason for that is that, I'm sorry, but
There's a lot of people want to speak. Just make it faster, get the project.
I'll try to finish up. But please, I don't want it to feel like I'm a nuisance over here, and you're only listening to me because you have to let me talk, and you're not going to respond.
I told you that you have
Okay.
very comments, and I accepted it.
Okay, so I'm finishing up. And if I'll forget a point, I believe that the chairman will give me some courtesy and deal with it.
Over the next 2 meetings to get them home. You can say whatever you miss, you can say that.
Okay, I will hold you to that word. So I will finish up over here with this. With that property, what he failed to say is that approval was done on paper streets. He got an approval to put this apartment buildings on the paper streets, and that's the reason why he was not able to build, because the township committee said, we made a mistake with that faculty housing approval, but we're not vacating any streets because this corner of Cross and Methuselah has a grid, and the developers are trying very hard to vacate those streets. So he technically cannot build with that approval because he's not able to vacate the street, so his approval is toilet paper. And you know what you do with toilet paper. So I just, the fact that they didn't give the reasoning behind every zoning change is alarming to me. I'll give another, this is not an example about giving reasoning, but you have to understand there's I live in that neighborhood, so there's 3 properties that you're trying to rezone that I know that public is very objectable about it. The other one was in Hartstone. Cindy Krupnik has that property, and there's a whole forest over there that he's trying to develop. If you change it, and one of the things when he came to the board, and you remember it was just recently, was said this will give him a lot of leeway, and I stood up and I supported it. But give us the roads. Give us the access. Here's where the problem is. If you give him R75 as a right-of-way, and he could go now to the zoning board and get it changed, or he could go to the township committee, I don't think the township committee will ever approve that ordinance, but I think they will go to the zoning board and saying, is the master plan recommended it? What will happen is you're losing your negotiation power of getting him to opening the roads inside that forest that is closing up all the streets on Route 9 to connect it to Massachusetts to be able to make the cross. So I'm not against him getting a higher density part on that, but I want the board to leave themselves negotiation power as far as getting the roads done. So, and this point is not only on that, it's on everything. The fact that you're giving developers right-of-way things without them asking them to open up roads, there's an example in Hartstone themselves. You approved over there, the Mansour came, and the developer came with a by right application in Hartstone, you had to give it to him. Was missing a 100-foot span to connect that street to Hartstone development, to Hartstone Street. And I asked Brian Fownery, are you willing to give it? He says, no, my client is coming with a by right application, and give it to him. If he would have had that the zoning would have been on a higher scope, he would have said, okay, we'll give you lower, but develop those streets, and that helps the whole neighborhood. So I'm trying to bring out a point, but you increase in density, you're giving away your negotiation power to get streets done. The other one is in Chestnut. There's a big opposition over there to any zoning changes. I know you moved out of there, rightfully so. I would have moved out from that neighborhood too with the Ms. Medrish problems, with all the issues, Mr. Folman. But you know very well is that neighborhood, you could still drive through Chestnut Street. No, you didn't live there? I'm sorry. I made a mistake? Okay, I'm sorry. And you're still able to somehow drive through that street. It's just the intersection. Route 9 gets plugged up in New Hampshire. But if you start clogging up that whole neighborhood with duplexes, like the zoning board did already, and you're doing a lot of cul-de-sacs because there's no access, because you made a lot of open space over there that you can connect these streets to any part else. So you're only putting a hardship on the neighborhood and not a whatever. And I just one final thought, and I leave the rest for later because there's other people over here. Just a final thought. But I don't understand, and I voiced it to Mr. Franklin, and I will voice it to the full board and to the public. I don't understand this board. This board was, as far as understanding the public concerns the last few months, I felt as this is the way a board should be. Could be other people disagreed with me, but I was sitting here and I didn't agree with everything that you denied. But the concern that you had for the public with roads and sidewalks and all that was, and you kept on voicing that we can't increase density. What happened, I saw it in the last meeting and I see it in this meeting, what happened that the board feels, and it's a Hebrew word, it's called unes al-pi hadibah. That means it looks like they're being forced to say yes on something that they totally disagreed 2 weeks ago. So again, I'm just voicing my frustration that I saw that the board is very into, they were not into like approving all the other subcommittees, but the density, let's approve it. Let's say is no, not a full approval. Let's say is that we're consensus, we're agreeing to the fundamental zone changes. And again, this is the T&M. I think the fact is that you gave today a very good map, but you as a professional company that the taxpayer paid so much money, this map should have been available to the public a while ago. The public, again, it's a great map, you did a great job, and it seems like you did it over a day.
Yeah, I was asked last night to do it, by the way.
But again, this stuff, again, I don't want to put you in a bad spot, but these type of maps, to explain to the public like it was explained today, and I know the other members of the public didn't have the opportunity, but I got special privileges from Ellie Morris to give me a copy, and I was able to follow it. It was great. I understood what's going on, like the board did. So I think, this type of giving it over, and good for the board that the board ordered them to do it, but this should have been represented to begin with this way. And the only reason why I'm mentioning it, I don't want to make it look bad, but as you go on with this master plan, or anything that you do with the township, please be more public friendly. Just please. You don't have to, but please. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Carol Suckno, 59 Foxwood Road. I was sworn in last night.
Sorry, I didn't tonight. Do you swear or affirm that the statement you make before this board this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
The seniors respectfully request that you reinstate Zone 40RB behind Rosewood Drive. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about,
Where is that?
That's the one that was invalidated.
Yeah, there was, yeah.
the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was you spoke about the library before. And it's something that the seniors really use a lot. And several years ago, we were able to get a truck, a library truck that came to our development once a week. It brought the books we ordered, and we were able to return the books that had to go back. It was a wonderful service, and we all enjoyed it, and for some reason it was removed, maybe it was financial, but we would request that you look into that again. There are many people
It's a very good idea.
There are many people that don't have access to getting to a library because they're handicapped, they're not feeling well, and one of the few things they can really enjoy is reading.
Just one question. John, the public library is county or that's the township? That's county. So we have to make a recommendation to the county, they should give more services to the senior. That would be our recommendation. Okay, thank you.
And the other thing that I know that is not Lakewood, but perhaps you could work on that one too, was we used to have a truck, a mail truck that came once a week and parked in front of our clubhouse, and people were able to buy stamps, hand them their packages, they waited, we paid for it, and they were taken care of. And that also is a much-needed service by seniors.
Especially that the post office moved out of the downtown.
Yes, yes.
It's much harder.
And there's very long lines there, people have trouble standing, so we would appreciate it if you could look into that too for us.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Just address, I mean, those recommendations are in the master plan. One about the possibility of a satellite library in the southwest part of the, southeast or southwest part of the township, and also the bookmobile services as alternative.
We'll just acknowledge it by the next
so.
meeting. If not, we'll address it.
Harold Hershowitz, 1496 Cedar Row, Lakewood. I didn't wash my hands since last night, do I have to do it again?
Do you swear or affirm that the statements made before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I affirm.
Please proceed.
Okay. I can't just talk about one specific thing, but I heard you guys talking about parks and my favorite subject, the downtown. And I just wanted to just add, first of all, you were discussing the parks, you were saying what wonderful parks that we have here. Most of the parks that we have in Lakewood are inaccessible, walking-wise, for most
I didn't say
people.
that it's wonderful, I said that it needs help.
No, but you're not going to be making those parks close to people's homes. So for example, the other day I was leaving my store and I turned onto Route 9 and I noticed there's a large empty lot on Route 9 and 4th, I believe. It has a big sign that says this is going to future townhouses or a bank is going to go there. But I noticed there were about, I would say, at least 40 kids playing on this empty lot, throwing balls, running around. That lot's going to be gone in a couple of months. It's going to be gone. There's nothing, it's not, it's a private lot. Exactly. There's no place for people to play, for children to play, or for people to gather. If you go to any town in New Jersey, some of the most horrendous towns, parts of Elizabeth, which look disgusting, dilapidated, but wherever they have a cluster of homes, there's a small open space. And what I mean small, I don't mean Lakewood small, I mean small. Right, but it's more than a tot lot. There's some open space next to any area that you have. You're allowing people to build developments with 100 homes with literally a postage-size stamp lot with a very inferior small little playground with absolutely no place to play. And anyone who goes to any of these developments, you see, there's children running around, jumping around on pogo sticks, running around. There's no place to play. There's no room to move. There's no room to walk in these places. So I'm just saying, I think it's just funny that while you guys are sitting here talking, debating about parks, at the same time, a few months ago, the township literally gave away one of the only open spaces to play in this whole entire area, which is a basketball court by Monmouth and 4th. They gave it away to Shlomo Chaim Kinneret, who said that he's promising that he's going to be building a recreation center one day. There was no actual detailed discussion where this recreation center is going to be. There's an open basketball court over there. Yes, next to yes. Yes, that's being used by many people. And now it's gone. Now it's gone because it's being given to Rabbi Kinneret so that he could add on to his parking for his mall that he's putting in, a strip mall, another strip mall. So I'm just saying, like, all these suggestions and all this talk about improving parks and all this stuff, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean anything unless you actually do it. And the township is not listening to anything that you're saying because they're just going to end up doing it. And that being said, now the downtown. We had the downtown meetings. Some of the suggestions were as ludicrous as the bridge. I know you didn't like the bridge idea, but making Clifton Avenue into a one-way street with diagonal parking coming out. Can you imagine the amount of cars that need to get to Cedar Bridge, driving down the street and people coming out backwards into traffic? Basically, nobody's going to be moving. There will be no movement of traffic whatsoever. The idea of diagonal parking came about 10 years ago when the town was still livable, drivable. But at this point, to make diagonal parking on Clifton Avenue is absolutely insane. Now, that being said, the only way that we're ever going to improve the downtown is if Justin, are you an assemblyman or you're not an assemblyman? You didn't put in an assemblyman? Okay, I was going to say Assemblyman Flansbaum but you're the head of the LIC, which is the Lakewood Industrial Commission. Lakewood Industrial Commission basically decides, you know, in the industrial areas, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And that's what we need in the downtown. The downtown will never be fixed up until we get, turn it into a business improvement district, make a real business improvement district, and have a commission that enforces everything from signage, what type of stores can go in, what type of buildings need to be taken away. There are some buildings that honestly need to be taken away by eminent domain, that need to be just taken away from the owners because they're an eyesore, they have criminal activity going on in them. I don't want to go into any details, but they're...
That was recommended.
What, to create a business improvement district and a commission? No, that was not. Not that I know of. No. It was recommended because we had a private discussion about it. We need to create a commission. There needs to be a commission of people who are knowledgeable, who understand what a downtown is supposed to look like. And that commission has to have full control of what type of stores go in. You know, you're sitting there and saying like, oh, we want restaurants for the seniors to be around. That's not happening unless somebody actually does it, okay? Now, again, I have been trying to get the downtown fixed up for over 10 years now. Well, no more, I'm sorry, 17 years, okay? I put my money where my mouth is. I built my building. I invested in other businesses which failed because the downtown is a disaster, okay? And I am competing against who? Who am I competing against? I'm competing against the strip malls. Who manages the strip malls? Who's the manager of the strip malls? One of my own committeemen, Mayor Lichtenstein, okay? I'm competing against him, so I'm working hard to bring businesses that are going to create a nice atmosphere into the downtown, and those businesses are being taken by Mayor Lichtenstein and brought to strip malls on the other side of town. Is that fair? Now we're on to Mayor Lichtenstein. This is what I really wanted to talk to you guys about. I have spoken to some of you guys in private, at length, about what needs to be done in this town. And you all know what needs to be done in this town. And we've been talking about specifics and all different types of zonings and everything, but we all know, you know what I mean, we all know what the problem with this town is. We're done. We can't build anymore. There's no place, there's no room. There's no way to build. I've been living here 29 years. 29 years ago, I bought one of the first townhouses, okay, on 7th and Lexington. A guy built 9 townhouses. It took him 2 years to get approvals. 2 years to get approvals for 9 townhouses. Are you listening? Are you listening to me, Rabbi? Okay. Not the way it's supposed to be, Rick. Not with Benny Heineman as the head of it. Let's put it that way. No, I'm talking about the commission. I'm not talking about the business improvement. Yes, they did discuss a business improvement district. Yes, they did. But they did not discuss a commission. A commission is a group of people that have the power. In other words, when a guy decides to put up a banner instead of a real sign, which Mayor Lichtenstein would never allow in one of his strip malls, right? We need to be able to have the ability to tell the inspection department to tell him to take down his banner and put up a sign that it befits the image of the downtown. The same as the Industrial Commission, exactly. Now, again, back to what I was saying about about what we were talking about. 29 years ago, when I moved here, and I was told, you know, you better buy one of these townhouses on 7th and Lexington because there is no place to build in Lakewood. And I remember saying to this guy, I said, what are you talking about? There's so much empty land. And he said, oh, but they're never going to allow that empty land to become housing. And the reason you don't allow empty land to become housing is because the more you build, the more your taxes go up. And I said this before, and this is the last time I'm going to say it. The more you build 100 townhouses, that's 600 children. Out of 600 children, you're going to have 20 of those children are going to need special needs education. That's $2 million right there. Let's say it's only 10 children that need special needs education that you're bringing into this town. That's $1 million right there. And you're bringing in $500,000 in taxes on a community like Bell's on Route 70. You're bringing in $500,000. So you're losing already $500,000 before you've even paid for busing, before you've paid for snow removal, garbage removal. You're losing millions of dollars. Every development that you're putting in is costing the taxpayers money. It's costing the seniors money. They're living on fixed incomes, okay? And I don't live on a fixed income, and I'm suffering. Everyone is suffering, all so that the builders can continue building. And the builders don't even make money. The builders end up just putting it into another project, and then they lose money on their last project. So who is benefiting? Who's benefiting? The people that are moving into the townhouses, they're not happy because their kids are jumping around on pogo sticks trying to avoid the cars that are driving by 2 inches away from them from getting killed. Who is benefiting from all this? Nobody. Nobody benefits. Oh, because now there's a place for Jews to move? Guess what? There's a lot of places for Jews to move. Okay, there's a few less now because of the hurricanes, but there's plenty of places for Jews to move. We can live wherever we want. They don't have to all live in Lakewood. Okay? Now, we're getting to the point. Now, you all agree with me. I know you do. Even the ones I haven't spoken to. I know you agree with me because I know you've been stuck in traffic on Route 9, and perhaps maybe you had to go to the bathroom, and you couldn't get to the bathroom in time. I don't know. I'm sure you've had some bad experiences. I'm sure. We've all had bad experiences. Or your child is sitting in school and needs to be picked up and is sick, and you're trying to get to them, and it takes you 45 minutes because you had the chutzpah of driving down Route 9 at 3:45. Because it's like it's going to take an hour to get down Route 9. So you know that we're at capacity. You know we're at capacity. So what's stopping you from getting up to the Township Committee and saying, you know what, enough is enough, we're not doing it? Something's stopping you. So now, that person could be Bob Singer, right? Who owns a piece of Eagle Ridge and wants to see 1,800 homes go up and doesn't care because he doesn't live here. That person could be Mayor Lichtenstein, because Mayor Lichtenstein is the manager of the builders that are in the back over here who are standing here with bated breath watching this whole proceeding, wanting to know what's going to happen because this is their livelihood, right? It could be Mayor Lichtenstein. Okay, but I'm just saying, it could be Mayor Lichtenstein, or it could be he who shall not be named, Aaron Cutler. I don't know. But it's not your brains, because I've spoken to you guys. And I know that you know that a moratorium is the way to go. That's what we need right now. We need a full moratorium based on future improvements, and those improvements can never happen. So as long as those improvements don't happen, we shouldn't be building at all. Okay? That's it. I'm done.
Anyone else in the public who'd like to speak, please come forward. Please state your name for the record.
Mark Hurst. I live on Strawberry Lane in the Fairways.
Right.
Does it matter? Yes. Okay.
Do you swear or affirm that the statement you make before this board this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
To the extent that my opinion can be the truth, yes. So I heard earlier today people talking about, what was it called, impact fee?
Speaking to the mic.
An impact fee?
Go left or-
An impact fee?
Yes.
So that's kind of useless in my mind. You're just collecting what amounts to an extra tax from a developer, and it's going to get put into what I assume is some sort of fungible fund for the town. And it really won't accomplish anything other than to have more money to spend on whatever you want to spend it on.
I think the impact fee can only be used for upgrading infrastructure, developing roads, sidewalks, not for...
Okay, well, I'll take you to your word, but until government actually makes policy and acts, then that really doesn't mean anything. That's proper, but I think it would be more useful for you to make the developers, when they come in and want to build large developments especially, to make the improvements on the spot. They already have the capital resources in place to do the improvements, and you don't have to then take the money in and go to bid and contract. It's a very inefficient system to take a fee in and then have to go make arrangements to spend it. Make the developers spend the money up front, improve the town while the development is being made, and you'll end up in a better situation than what you have now. For the last 20 years, I've been a Lakewood resident for a relatively short period of time, but it doesn't seem to me that there's really been any kind of planning going on for the last 20 years. And you now have the town you deserve rather than the town you want. So something else has to be done. It's very clear, make the developers pay for developing the town, not just what they want to develop. You'll end up with a much better town.
Thank you very much.
Brian Flannery, 257 East Pleasant Grove Road, Jackson, New Jersey.
Do you swear or affirm that the statements you make before this board this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
I have to say I agree with Mr. Klein on one point. I'm glad I'm not in your place.
Only one.
Probably. Well, he made the sidewalks, another good point. So he makes some good points. But in this particular case, he related it to pressure from developers. I see pressure from developers, pressure from seniors, pressure from Take Back Lakewood, innuendos from certain speakers that people are corrupt and there's corruption rampant in Lakewood. And on the corruption issue, there was a big corruption sting around 10 years ago. And Mr. Dweck, who was very helpful in getting corrupt people caught, apparently he has some skills at that, tried tempting a lot of people in Lakewood, and I know people that he spoke with. In Lakewood, there was one guy that was in the corruption scam. The corruption scam went Monmouth County, Ocean County. It was phenomenal. And my take on why there weren't more people from Lakewood is because the corruption isn't rampant like certain people seem to think there is. There was one building inspector, and I know he was kind of entrapped, and I feel bad for him. He was a nice guy. He broke the law. He got caught. If it was as rampant as it would have been different. But you're here, you're getting pressure from the developers, from the seniors, and they have legitimate concerns. I'm not saying they don't have legitimate concerns. You're getting it from Take Back Lakewood. What you're not getting it from is the other group that Mrs. Friedman referred to last night as the silent majority. Now, the silent majority, she explained it well, and there have been people at all the meetings, but the silent majority wasn't so silent at the voting booth. When Take Back Lakewood, who thought nobody in Lakewood wants anything done, put up candidates, the silent majority was pretty loud and clear at the voting booths. Mr. Klein also mentioned number 32, and he had his theories for why it was done, and he said it was only because of a campus, which isn't viable. The campus is viable. They have an amended application into the planning board. It's a viable application, and it was more than just a campus. That's in the Prospect and Cross Street core that was slated for development. Smart Growth is saying development belongs in appropriate locations, and that was an appropriate location. It's across a major highway from the seniors. It's across the major highway from Hartstone. You can't find any place in town that isn't across the major highway from some neighborhood. That if that was the case, then there would be no development, as some speakers have suggested. But then you're not going to be balancing all of the concerns of the many groups I've mentioned. He also talked about Hartstone and how that was wrong. And Mr. Klein gives you his side of the story, and he skews it a little, and he's very good at it. Those recommendations were in the 2007 master plan. They were in there for a reason. The same reasoning holds place when you look at what's around Hartstone, Blue Jay Court, the other court. It's 8,000 square foot lots. So my testimony is that that's an appropriate recommendation. We got recommendations from Mr. Robertson, and Mr. Robertson has been very good at not wasting the board's time. I'm going to try to do the same thing. He certainly has experience in this. He's a professional, and he has advocated for the seniors. I am now going to advocate for the other groups other than just the seniors when I go through his report. His report had 13 items, and last night John Jackson asked him for it because he said there were over 100 inconsistencies, and John said, please give us the inconsistencies. The 13 items aren't all inconsistencies. The 13 items are mostly his opinion. Item 1, he says, all county exteriors is shown in an R10. The first draft that came out showed it in an R10. The August 24th one that came out doesn't show it clearly, but it doesn't show it changing the zone. And my interpretation of that map was it's still in the M1 that it was in. So that was number 1. Number 2, the same thing with the masters. My interpretation of it, and you look on that map, it's not changing. It's still in the same M1 that it's in. Number 3 on his list was the remainder should be changed from an R40 to an R40C. We don't have an R40C zone, so there's no zone to change it to. Number 4 said that the Eagle Ridge Golf Course was mandated by the other, the Fairways development, which is not the case. The state at that time allowed 80% impervious coverage. That development, when you do it on its own without the golf course, is in the neighborhood of 30% impervious coverage, well below what the state needed. The The Lakewood ordinance says you need 50% open space, and by the Lakewood ordinance definition, that standalone has more than 50% open space. So his comment is that it was needed. That's not accurate. Number 5 said that all non-municipal golf courses should be listed as open space. Well, that's taking somebody's property and listing it as open space, which in my opinion is not an appropriate use. The golf course has always been its own separate, a private piece of property, a property that pays taxes, and to take that and make it open space would be inappropriate. The municipal landfill, he thinks, should be in its own zone. The municipal landfill right now is a golf course that's paying taxes, and the golf course is in an R40 zone, which it's currently in, and your map doesn't show it to be changed and shouldn't, because the R40 zone allows golf courses, and that's what that is. He indicates Augusta Boulevard is a private road. I don't think the master plan should concern itself with listing all the private roads. We have a lot of private roads in town that I don't think that's a master plan issue, and certainly I would defer to T&M on that. If we're going to list all privately owned roads, there's going to be a lot of work in the master plan that's going to have no benefit. Number 8 on his list was if you're correcting ordinances, then you should put the R40B back. Well, there were several ordinances that were overturned that I didn't hear the planning board say they're going to put back. In 2014, in the Cross and Drake area, there were ordinances that proposed duplexes. I didn't hear anybody say we're going to put them back. The County Line Road, there was an ordinance that allowed retail development. I didn't hear anybody say they're going to put that back. So nobody said across the board any of them that were overturned because of notice issues.
What's an R40B?
Oh, R40B was an ordinance that was adopted that said no schools, and it was around this development, and Rob gives his reasoning for it, and again, he's giving his opinion of what the reasons for. The reasons were it was political pressure because the seniors didn't want schools. Everybody's in favor of schools. We should have a school zone. Ask anybody, we should have a school zone, but not in their backyard. Put the school zone in somebody else's backyard. The seniors didn't want schools around them, and the township adopted an ordinance without proper notice. And your master plan, and it's conflicting views. Again, I'm glad I'm not in your seat because there's the need for the schools that nobody wants in their backyard. There's some people that want more housing, some people that like this lifestyle. There's a need to fix the roads, and you need to get money for that. So it's a balancing act, and God bless you guys for taking this on. You have to balance the act, and I expect everybody's going to be a little bit unhappy, and if you don't make everybody a little bit unhappy, you probably didn't do the job right. If one person's happy and everybody seems to think all the developers are happy, they're not a happy group, believe me. That's the balancing act that you have to do. In number 8, he says that the Fairways never objected to schools. I did an application for Rabbi Hackerman's school, and it probably wasn't the Fairways, but it was people from the Fairways that filed an appeal against that, where he was in an old dilapidated house that we heard, what they look like, and he wanted to build a regular school for the same boys. And he went to the zoning board because he was in the R40B. The zoning board approved it, and it got appealed in court. The number 9 on his list is there's been no development. If there's been no development since the 2007 recommendation, don't do what's in 2007. My recommendation is look at each of those as it seems you've done. If they still make sense, do it. If they need to be adjusted, you adjust it. To just dismiss them because no development has occurred, there's a reason no development occurred, because they didn't get adopted because the township was negotiating with the state on the plan endorsement process. Number 10, there's a term in there that's got no definition. Certainly define the term that has no definition. Number 11, he talks about the statements of encouraged growth and development in appropriate locations, and everybody's idea of an appropriate location is different. His idea is appropriate locations are not where it's going to have any impact on the seniors. Other people's definitions are certainly relate to the smart growth plan that shows where development should occur. Number 12 relates to schools. His opinion is they should be conditional uses. My opinion is different on that. The basic thought process on conditional uses is that the planning board is not going to balance the benefits and the detriments as well as the zoning board would by raising it to another level. I think with the need we have for schools in Lakewood to create an additional burden, and one of the comments is it'll slow down the schools. We can't slow down the schools or the kids have nowhere to go.
It's not conditional use, it's legal to build a school that's zoned. It doesn't fit. You can't have drop-offs, you can't, we're not approving.
Well, that's correct, and the logic behind making it as a conditional use is that the planning board is going to give variances and approve developments that are inappropriate. And I know if you talk to a lot of people, they say the planning board and the zoning board approves everything that gets submitted. I know that's not true because I'm at all of those meetings. I've had a lot of my applications that I thought were good applications denied. If that wasn't true, nobody would hire me and I could retire because if everybody could just get everything approved without presenting it to the board and presenting the benefits of the project and the detriments so that the board can make the decision, it's not the case. There's a perception out there that nobody in Lakewood pays taxes, that everything that gets submitted gets approved, all of these perceptions, and they get repeated over and over again and people think they're facts. Yes. Number 13 is relating to the existing land uses, and if they're wrong, if Rob's right on that and they're wrong, T&M should fix it. That addresses his report. There's also when I heard last night's meeting with respect to the land use, it sounded like the board wanted to go through the land use items that were recommended. There were several, and I have 6 of them, land use items that were not recommended. And I think part of that is because either the recommendation wasn't flexible enough or it wasn't understood. And I have, to make it quick, I made copies that I can give to the boards that show where each of these are, explain them, show the maps, and I could run through each of them very quickly. If the chairman is saying doing that at the next meeting, I'm going to be here then, and I'm happy to see you guys and talk to you.
Copy of this? Well, if he's submitting it to the board, I want copies of it.
They said not to get it, so I'm not submitting it, so
Okay, so
you're not getting
as
it.
soon as he gives it, I will and I won't have to wait 7 days.
Have in mind that you have 6 changes that you want to include in the zone.
I'd like to present them to the board. I'd like to give input on those 6 changes.
We are not voting on it tonight, but I think the first thing on the next meeting will be anybody else who has any recommendations, any zone change.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Mr. Randall.
Would it make sense for at least to give the handout so that I can do this?
I can ask him to email if you want him, but...
And you have to give it to Mr. Klein.
And I have to give it to Mr. Klein, and it's available. So what's the problem? It may just be easier to accept it at the meeting under the public comment.
Brian, will we have copies for the public at the next meeting? Mr. Flannery? Brian, can you have a few extra copies here by the next meeting? The public would like to see it. Any of the zone changes that you would like to recommend?
Well, there's a large crowd. I can't have it for everybody. The map that T&M brought tonight, I didn't even get to look at the copy. I looked at, you tell me how many copies you'd like, I'll bring extra copies.
If you bring them before the meeting that afternoon, I can make a handful of extra copies for the audience.
Okay.
We'll leave it here on the podium, whoever wants to look.
That way I can hand them out right before the meeting.
No problem. Okay, the board, we just need copies for all the board members. Okay, please-
James Campbell, or Jim Campbell, 6 Rosewood Court, Lakewood.
Do you swear or affirm that the statement you make before this board this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm, yes. Did the last speaker identify who he's representing? I didn't hear him start with that. He did say once before, when he wasn't dressed, he represented himself, and when he came dressed, he was representing someone.
Kimball, is he required to say who's representing?
No, we see that his name and address, and he was sufficiently interested in the master plan, so,
Would a resident of Jackson have an interest in these proceedings?
no, he commonly appears before this board.
Okay, I understand. I think between last night and tonight, I heard about the smart growth plan at least 100 times. But I don't know what that is, and I guess it depends on who you ask, what it is. But I know there's enough people in the general population who believe smart growth is, commensurate with.
Just 1 second, please.
Sure.
Ali, the smart growth plan is online, people can see it.
Along with all the other master plans.
Okay, I don't mean the plan itself, I really mean the use of the word. It seems to be more of an excuse for doing things.
No, I just want to make sure that's open to the public.
Okay,
Read if
thank
they
you.
have any interest in it.
Okay, and I will have an interest to look at it. But I really do believe that the general public thinks we've had enough growth. The roads, the water, the sewerage, open space is taxed enough. I think that's a general belief, but it's not a scientific belief. I do believe if you ask an engineer, an architect, a planner, a builder, a developer, their definitions, you just can't build enough. That's who makes, maybe not everyone makes money, but that's where a lot of the money goes. And we're left with the result of that. We're left with a town that you can't get around. Now, the only definition that really matters is what you believe up here. You're the 7 or 8 people who are going to make the determination on what is smart growth for Lakewood. I don't care what it is in the rest of New Jersey, but I do care what it is here. But it's incumbent on you to make a wise use and whether or not we can increase the density. Can you take a look at that map in your own mind or on the wall or in front of you? Look at the number of changes that you codified or you're trying to codify now that's happened in the last 10 years. Now, there was a plan 10 years ago, 2007. There was growth allotted. This is all additional growth. We said, well, it's existing, let's just codify it. So no matter what you do tonight or next week or next month, there's going to be changes by the planning board, by the zoning board, there's going to be variances, there's going to be all sorts of growth. You need to limit the growth, and you're the group that can do it. You set this plan in motion, and God bless you to do a good job. Thank you.
Sam Debenzel, 22 SD Circle, Lakewood. Nebenzahl.
Raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm that the statement you make before this board this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm. I live on SD Circle. SD Circle is deed restricted A1. I think that's the right words, 2 acres. When I bought my property and my neighbors, we met with members of the planning board at the time, and we assured that it's deed restricted, so deed restrictions do not come off easily, and that it would stay that way as deed restricted. That was our understanding, that was the advantage of having something deed restricted, that it can't just be removed easily. I saw the recommendation in the, I don't know what the... Okay, so I saw the recommendation, it was brought up for the...
If it's deed restricted.
It is deed restricted, yeah.
Okay, then I don't think we have the right to.
So, okay, so I just wanted to say that in the, I forgot what it's called, the recommendations of that book, it's...
A deed restriction only a judge can, right? Okay, so if it is deed restricted, I'm not saying.
Then you're saying, so you guys wouldn't change anything?
If it's deed
If it's
restricted, we don't have we can't change it.
Then we, let him finish what he was saying, because I don't think it's proposed for changes in that area.
There was a proposal, and the recommendation was to deny it. So there was a proposal. The first proposal is page 255. There was a proposal. I don't know why there was a proposal in that case, but there was a proposal, and the recommendation of the I forgot what it's called. The master plan subcommittee recommendation was to deny.
So
rezoning map does not show a change.
That's correct. The proposed rezoning map does not show a change to our neighborhood.
You're just reaffirming.
I'm just reaffirming the neighbors, that there are many neighbors, there might be some neighbors that do want to change it, but there are many neighbors, such as myself, that don't want to. So he's telling me you can't. Okay. Thank you very much for all the work you do on behalf of the township.
Thank you very
Have a good night.
Anybody else please come forward?
Abe Horowitz, 740.
Please speak into the mic, state your name.
Abe Horowitz, 740 Somerset Avenue, Lakewood, New Jersey.
Do you swear or affirm that the statements you make before this board will be the truth and the truth, nothing but the truth?
I affirm.
Thank you.
So, I have a property on East 7th Street, 615, and to the north of East 7th is R75 zoning, to the south is R12. So, I have enough square footage, and I could,
I should ask you, are you commenting on anything we spoke about tonight?
yeah, basically, I just wanted to know if half the block is R75 and the other half of the block is R12, if you could just make it a whole R75 zoning, because if I ask for a variance, it could be I'll get it, it could be I won't, but
If you address, by the next meeting, we'll be addressing any other such issues.
All right.
Tonight, the public comment is only what we spoke to.
All right, thank you.
The next meeting, you want to get on the record? Yeah, I think you should write something up or get a map to show us exactly what you're talking about.
All right.
You just print the tax map on the website.
If everything is R75 or R12, whatever it is, we will consider it.
Thank you.
We can write it on the banner.
Very quickly, sir, if I may. For the record, I trust, I don't need to be sworn again, do I?
Just saying.
Frederick Robinson, 79 Eagle Ridge Circle. Yes.
Still called Rob?
Still called Rob. I am confident this board can sort out what I said myself in the words that were put into my mouth previously.
Like I said before, Marty is looking through all the information.
Okay.
I can't hear you.
Marty will be looking through all the recommendations Rob made, and if they are correct, we'll incorporate it, if not, we'll address it by next meeting.
Well, thank you, sir. I think it's important that...
We take it very seriously, we'll come.
Yeah, and I would encourage those who speak to go back and read their own testimony from 1997 before they make comment under oath. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, no problem, thank you. Who's around that 1997?
The major subdivision approval that was for both the golf course and the fairways that included open space calculations for the entire area.
Okay.
Aaron Hirsch, 146 Mountain View Drive.
Do you swear or affirm that the statements you made before this board this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm. Good evening. I found something very interesting that was made, a comment that was made earlier. The silent majority wants what's going on. I find it very interesting because I'm just figuring out what's going on. The silent majority, I'd say 99% of the town has no clue what you're doing. They have no idea. It's never been publicized. For someone to get up here and say it's silent majority has no clue. Advertised all these zone changes, all these subcommittees did not have these zone changes. I don't know where they came in. There's a state law that requires if you want to do a zone change, and I understand this is different, but if you want to do a zone change, you need to notify the neighbors. If you want, I'm quoting state law, if you're going to change a zone, you have to notify within 200 feet or any approval. Problem is, what's gone into this master plan, by the subcommittee meetings, these zone changes were not there, especially in my neighborhood. It was never there, it was never brought up.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think when the master plan committee meets, gets advertised in the newspaper.
That's wonderful, but no one knows this.
We don't notice people within 200 feet. That's why the zoning board of plan wants to make a specific change. But this was noticed for the whole town.
I understand, but when you, what?
It's legal.
No, I get it, I understand. What I'm saying is, when all these subcommittees did not have these zone changes. And I know right now it's in the book. I don't know how it got there, but I can assure you, it was not notified to anyone at any of those subcommittee meetings. And now, what's going on is, you're supposed to be implementing a master plan of what the town wants. No one in this town knows these zone changes, what you guys are doing. I'm telling you, no one knows it. It would be fair to publicize it and then let public comment come in. Because there's a reason why there's laws I get master plan's different, but you're talking about 10 years of growth. We're not talking about on a simple home construction application, you have to notify 200 feet. We're talking about 10 years of massive changes to this town. And you're telling me tonight the map just showed up? It wasn't notified weeks in advance? People should know what's going on. I get it's in your book, but people have no clue what's happening. How could you do this? People behind, Brian Flannery sending in recommendations. Here's go more changes. This is what the public wants, what certain investors want. Let the public that where they live should know, hey, we're going to do this. Because if someone just wants to get a little subdivision, the neighbors have to be notified. Here, we're changing 10 years of future, and no one knows what's going on. It's quiet. It's going on behind the scenes. I don't think if the state knew about this, they would approve of this. Sneaking in things backdoors, this is supposed to be what the township wants. I promise you, this is not what the township wants. Or at least let's hear them out. Give them an opportunity to speak their mind, because no one knows this. I didn't even know till last night that you're changing my neighborhood. This is unfair. And I'll continue at the next meeting, because I have a lot more that I have to say about what's going on, and it's really not fair, especially in my neighborhood. Don't change it. Don't change. There's a lot of people now, I live in the Chestnut neighborhood. If I want to turn onto New Hampshire, it takes forever. If I have to go to Route 9 during the day, when it's close to pickup time, you have no idea. And they just built a shopping center on my corner, and it's made traffic horrendous. I personally went to the county, talked to them, and I have a letter home from the county engineer. They said it's at least 2 years until they put a Chestnut and New Hampshire light. It's bad. It's backed up. You could. It's a county road, and you cannot do anything. We are talking about making a lot more housing and stuff us in. We moved there because we want to have a place to live. We don't want to be squashed in on these R75s. We don't want that. If we want to be squashed in, we can go to other places. But the point is, Chestnut is getting messed up by the day. We keep putting in more stuff over there. There is a few years out until the traffic light. Forget even widening the place. We're going to squeeze it up. It's becoming and we are from the heaviest accidents in Lakewood are both corners. New Hampshire and Route 9 and Chestnut are from the highest accident rates in the whole township. To keep changing these zones and not even let our neighbors talk about this. No one even knows what's going on. I guarantee you, I go start talking to people, they will have no clue what's going on. I know technically you could put it into the master plan, but the master plan is supposed to be, on the other hand, the master plan is supposed to be what the people of the town want. And the people of the town do not even know. And they do not speak because they don't know what's in there. And we need to publicize this stuff, and not just at the meeting, okay, we'll give it out. It should be available for the public. It should be advertised. What?
The Jewish papers.
It should be made public that anyone that needs to, like for any application, it has to be available. Anyone comes to an application, it has to be available over there. Same thing with the maps.
It's available on our website.
The maps?
Yes, in the same place that all of the planning.
The maps were available?
And they're all part of the report.
Yeah, there are.
Aside from the one that was requested last night to be created,
Well,
it was created.
Well, I think it would be important for everyone in this town to be able to see the specific maps, how their neighborhoods are being impacted for the next 10 years of what we're going to do. It's not like one approval. We're talking about massive changes to the whole town. People should be allowed to know, and they should know. It should be transparency in the process. Thank you.
Anybody else in public?
Hi, Patty Robinson, 79 Eagle Ridge Circle.
You got the
Do you swear or affirm that the statement made before this board this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just hope the board will take into consideration what more dense housing will do. We need to fix what's wrong with Lakewood, and we need to work on it now. We can't do more dense housing. I've talked about the townhouses they've built there on Cross Street near Route 9. One exit in and out. There's only one set of those townhouses that are being occupied right now. When those houses, when all of them are occupied, there's going to be no way for those people to get in and out. And we talk about expanding Cross Street, making it bigger. There's no way to make Cross Street bigger right there. Those townhouses, their decks are about 50 feet from the road. There's no way we can do it. It can't be fixed. So please, before you do any more, approve any more dense housing, let's look at what we need to do first. I mean, those townhouses are there. We can't fix them now. That problem's already there. And as for Mr. Flannery, he's not a resident of Jackson. He is representing the builders, and a lot of those builders are not from Lakewood either. He doesn't live in Lakewood. This affects his pocket. It affects our lifestyle, and that's what I'm worried about. Lakewood is a beautiful community. That's why we moved here. Please, let's fix it before anything else goes wrong.
Seeing no one, we'll close it to the public, and we're closing this meeting now. Would you like to announce that the next meeting will be next week, Tuesday and Wednesday? Yes, one second. Yeah, will be Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll hear further comments. Do you have any more reports to go over? We went through all the reports.
You have several elements to go over.
Okay, so we'll be going over the next meeting, and we open to the public again for any public comment. Mr. Grumman, you have a question?
Regarding the transportation, transportation, I want to know if it's possible for Mari to look into the intersection of Spruce and Nine. It's where that near where I live. Maybe Ellen could help me out with that. There's a lot of congestion there, and if it's possible to possibly make a turning lane or some sort of maybe a traffic light. I know it's on Route 9, so that's maybe difficult, but just to see what can be done to alleviate that congestion.
Okay, just general recommendation. You realize as part of the master plan process, it's not part of it, we don't do design or something like that, but we can make general recommendations.
Just think about the next meeting, we should start with if anything that you heard tonight, anything has to be addressed, anything has to be changed, any corrections have to be made to the map, let's notify the public to know what we're doing.
Okay.
Okay, and then we'll open to the public again to hear if there's any changes.
To rezoning request.
Okay, if there's any new maps, anything, please have it, it's next week Tuesday, you can have it, we can put it online if it's possible, Alan.
If I get it.
But if you get it, to put it online, the public can see it, and if they want to make any comments.
Where do you go online to look for it?
Lakewood Township site.
You go onto the regular site, you don't see, Ellie, where do you find it on Lakewood
Go to
Township
the planning
website?
board.
How do you find the documents and the public doesn't know?
If you go to the planning board department webpage, because I know, let me back up for a second, the master plan was posted at some point in draft form by the committee or by the clerk's office or possibly by the manager's office elsewhere on the township website. I have no control or access to that posting. But in the same place where I post all of the planning board upcoming meeting agendas and applications and plans, there is the current version of the master plan, as well as the public comments that we have received in writing, as well as I will update with the updated maps that we provided from T&M today. That is on the planning department page of township website. Right in the middle, there's a link that says pending planning board application.
So basically, Ally, anything that we see by us is available for the public online. Anybody has a right to go look at it. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
Now we know.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just want to
Yeah,
mention that
Mr. Ryan.
Tuesday, I can't remember which night my wife told me to have a wedding. Tuesday or Wednesday.
I thought you married.